The She-Wolf of Yaransk. Prologue. In the heart of the Siberian winter, when the snow covers everything with its shining mantle, and the wind blows through the trees like an unseen call, the legend begins to take hold, and the village of Yaransk, hidden between mountains and endless forests, people spoke in whispers about a mysterious presence that walks among the shadows of the night. It is said that every full moon night, a white silhouette slithers through the silent snow, with light steps and eyes sparkling like the northern lights. She was the She-Wolf of Yaransk, the being who lived between two worlds, man and wolf, love and instinct, light and shadow. This story begins with 𝖂𝖗𝖗, the sister of Tarak and Nuri, who chose to remain between the worlds. The spirit of the forest offered her the gift and the curse, to be a man by day and a she-wolf by night, to feel the beauty and fragility of humanity, but also the strength and freedom of the wild beast. This choice transformed her into a living legend, a symbol of the impossible balance between wildness and love. Each of her steps carried the burden of desires and instincts, and each look hid the pain and passion of the entire world. After the breakup of the pack and the sacrifices that marked her past, 𝖂𝖗𝖗 left her native forests and arrived in Yaransk, hoping to find human peace. But the village's tranquility would never be complete. Tonight, her presence transformed the tranquility into mystery, and during the day, her beauty dazzled the gazes of those who met her. It is said that those who looked into her eyes for too long felt that they saw the love and pain of the world, mixed in a way that neither man nor wolf can comprehend. The legend speaks of forbidden love and sacrifice, of fear and fascination, of a fragile balance between man and nature. 𝖂𝖗𝖗 was not just a she-wolf or a woman, she was the bridge between two worlds, a warning and a blessing. The village of Yaransk would discover over time that her presence brought not only dangers, but also deep lessons about love, loyalty and balance, and this story of love, betrayal and nocturnal howls. Every night would be a battle between instinct and reason, every look and every step a testament to the endless bond between man and beast. The She-Wolf of Yaransk arrived to change everything, and no one would ever forget her footsteps in the snow. Chapter 1. Arrival. The night 𝖂𝖗𝖗 arrived in Yaransk was an icy one. The flakes were falling large, heavy, like petals of white ash, and the wind was making the shutters of the houses creak, and the middle of the village, a small inn, made of black wood, cast a faint light through windows. Inside, several silent men were drinking brandy and watching the embers in the stove. The door suddenly opened, and she appeared in the doorway, a young woman with snow-covered hair, her cheeks red from the cold, and her eyes shining strangely in the dim light of the lamp. Her fur coat made her look more like a forest creature than a woman. She approached the counter, and the men stopped talking. "Have you lost your way, girl?" asked an old man with a hoarse voice. "I'm looking for shelter. For a while," she answered simply. Her voice was soft, but there was something hypnotic, a musicality that made the inn fall silent for a few moments. The old owner, 𝖂𝖗𝖗, approached, measuring her with her eyes. "Are you alone?" "Yes." "Do you have money?" 𝖂𝖗𝖗 took out of his pocket a silver necklace, old and simple, with a small pendant in the shape of a wolf. 𝖂𝖗𝖗 looked at the necklace, then at the girl's eyes, and understood that in front of her was not just any stray. "You can stay here and the room upstairs. But don't go out at night. It's not good to walk through the forest when the moon is full," the woman said, making the sign of the cross. 𝖂𝖗𝖗 smiled weakly. "Don't worry, I'm not afraid of the moon." That night, when everyone had fallen asleep, 𝖂𝖗𝖗 got out of bed and approached the frozen window. Outside, the forest trembled in the wind. She felt her call, an old, familiar voice. And, without realizing it, she began to tremble. Deep inside her body, her blood boiled, burning her from the inside. A flash of light pierced her skin, and for a few moments she saw her fingers contort, sharp nails sprout. She leaned against the windowsill and closed her eyes. She resisted. The transformation stopped. Not here. Not yet. In the morning, the village woke up covered in fresh snow. 𝖂𝖗𝖗 went down, drank some hot tea, and offered to help with the inn's chores. The women looked at her with distrust. the men with a mixture of desire and fear. There was something about the way she moved, an inhuman, feline grace that attracted glances and unsettled hearts. Later, at the fountain, a child approached her, fascinated by her silver hair. "Are you a witch?" he asked. "No, little one, I am just a woman who came from the forest." "Then why do you smell of snow and wind?" The child laughed and ran away, but the old women who heard began to cross themselves. In Yaransk, rumors grew faster than the frost. That afternoon, Sayan saw Ilya for the first time. He was working at the woodcutter, his arms bare, his breath steaming in the icy air. When their eyes met, time seemed to stand still. She felt a thrill she hadn't known in a long time. It wasn't the call of the wolf, but something deeper. The call of the heart. "You're new around here," he said, approaching. "Yes. Just passing through. No passers-by stop in Yaransk in winter. Maybe I'm looking for something other than the road." Ilya smiled, not fully understanding the meaning of her words. That moment, a warm, human light lit up in Sayan's eyes. Part of her wanted to stay, just be a woman. But when night came again, and the moon rose over the rooftops, Sayan knew that the silence was just an illusion. Her body was gripped by heat, an old pain woke up in her bones, and the scream, the one she had kept inside, escaped her lips. She ran into the forest, leaving her clothes in the snow. Under the pale moonlight, the woman melted into the fur of a white she-wolf. Her eyes remained the same, amber. And, for the first time after years of loneliness, she felt complete freedom, but also hunger. Far away in the village, the dogs began to howl. People locked themselves in their homes, and 𝖭𝖃𝖵 whispered an old prayer, remembering the warning from her youth. "When a woman with fiery eyes comes from the forest, offer her neither bread nor shelter, for she brings with her the curse of the moon." Dawn. The village of Yaransk would wake up with strange footprints in the snow, human footsteps mixed with wolf tracks. And from there, the legend of the She-Wolf of Yaransk would begin. Chapter 2. Ilya. The days passed in Yaransk, silent and heavy as the snow that never stopped falling. Sayan, although she tried to live a quiet life, felt that every look cast on her carried a shadow of suspicion. The villagers greeted her coldly, and the children, once curious, avoided her and their eyes. Sayan was a stranger, a woman who seemed to come from another world, beautiful but unsettling. Only one seemed not to be afraid of her. Ilya, the young forester. He was a man of about 27, tall, with chestnut hair and a gaze as clear as the ice beneath the river. He had grown up among the trees. He knew how to read the tracks of animals and listen to the silence of the forest. In a world where people feared the unknown, Ilya had the courage to look him in the eye in the morning. Sayan found him in front of the inn, repairing the gate that had been knocked down by the storm. When he saw her, he smiled, and that smile warmed her more than the stove inside. "Good morning, stranger," he said, without stopping his work. "I'm not a stranger anymore, I think," she replied. "I've already spent 2 weeks here." "Maybe. But Yaransk is not a place that easily welcomes new people." "I noticed." Sayan ran her hand through her untangled hair, and the wind lifted it, making it shine in the pale light. Ilya looked at her with a restrained fascination. There was something unusual about her, but he didn't know what. Part of him felt attracted, another uneasy. After that day, they began to see each other more often. Sometimes she would go to the edge of the forest, where he chopped wood, and bring her hot tea. Other times, he would help her carry water from the well or accompany her to the village square, when the women murmured bad words about her. Once, when 2 old women had insulted her, calling her a forest girl and a bringer of bad luck, Ilya intervened. "Enough." His voice cut through the air like a blade. "You know nothing about her, but you rush to judge her." The villagers retreated, ashamed, and Sayan looked at him in amazement. No one had ever defended her before. "Why did you do this?" she asked him. "Because you deserved it. And because I don't like injustice." "Thank you, Ilya." "Don't thank me. Just promise me you won't leave too soon. This village needs someone to remind people that beauty is not a danger. That moment remained deeply imprinted in her soul. Sayan had not felt safe near a human for a long time. With Tarak and Nuri, the bond had been one of blood and survival. With 𝖭𝖵, she was discovering something new, tenderness. The following days were like a spell. 𝖭𝖵 taught her to chop wood, to catch fish with a hook, and to recognize animal tracks. One evening, when the light of sunset reflected in the snow, he took her to a clearing where the sky opened wide, full of stars. "I always come here when I need peace," he told her. "It's beautiful. It's like another world. Maybe it is. Maybe it is the world of those who don't fit in anywhere." Sayan smiled, recognizing in him a pain similar to hers. "You don't fit in either?" "No. People call me the silent forester, because I prefer to talk to the trees than to them." "And what do the trees tell you?" "That silence is also a language, if you know how to listen to it." She closed her eyes. Indeed, the wind whistled through the fir trees, and the snow creaked softly. "Then, now we are both talking," she whispered. Her words were lost in the cold air, but 𝖭𝖵's gaze remained glued to her face and those yellow eyes. He saw something wild, something that fascinated and frightened him at the same time. When she returned home, old 𝖭𝖵 looked at her with a worried expression. "You were in the forest again, weren't you? Just a walk. Don't play, girl. The forest has eyes and ears. Sometimes it takes the form of the people we love." Sayan was silent. The old woman's words stung her like a needle. That night, she dreamed of a white expanse, and from it rose a wolf with fiery eyes, Nuri, her brother. "Don't lose yourself in people, Sayan," he told her. "They can't love you without being afraid of you." But when she woke up, her heart didn't want to believe him. The days passed. 𝖭𝖵 and Sayan became inseparable. They shared meals, roads, silences, and one night, under a shower of flakes, he touched her hand. "Sayan," he said softly, "I know you're hiding something. That sometimes you get lost in your thoughts and your eyes change. But I don't care, I see who you are inside, and that's enough." She looked at him for a long time. "If you knew the truth, you'd look at me differently." "I don't think so. You'd run away." "Then let me decide when to run." Sayan smiled sadly. She loved him, but she knew that her love was a flame that burned everything it touched. And yet, that night, they united their destinies. Under the roof of the inn, with the wind whistling outside, they approached each other like two creatures called by the same longing. It was a silent love, without oaths, but deep. For a moment, Sayan forgot about the curse, the wolf, the forest. But the moon never forgets. A few hours after 𝖭𝖵 fell asleep, a sharp pain shot through her body. The transformation was hitting her earlier, more violently. She tried to stop it, but it was in vain. The moonlight was burning her skin, tearing it apart, and instead of the woman, a white she-wolf was left in the room. Sayan fled through the window, leaving traces bloody in the snow. In the morning, 𝖭𝖵 found the bed empty and the trail of blood. Panicked, he ran into the forest. Calling her name, in the distance, he saw a white figure, which stopped for a moment, looked at him with amber eyes and then disappeared among the trees. Knew then. Not completely, but enough to stop judging her. When Sayan returned at dawn, his clothes covered in snow, he said nothing, he just hugged her. "Don't be afraid any more," he whispered. "Whatever you are not alone." His words were like a blessing. But deep down, Sayan felt that this peace could not last. Her dual nature, woman and beast, could not be hidden forever. Their love was a fire under the snow. It burned smolderingly, but if the blizzard ever stopped, the whole world would see the flames. And soon, Yaransk would see them. Because the first death would come with the next full moon. And then, the legend of the She-Wolf of Yaransk would be written in blood. Chapter 3. The Shadow in the Forest. Snow had fallen all night over Yaransk, casting a dense, almost mystical silence. The houses had fallen asleep under the eaves, and the smoke from the stoves rose straight up, a sign that the wind was sleeping too. But that night, something had woken up. Something old, deep, moving between the ice-covered trees. its eyes shining like two yellow edges. When dawn broke, the village woke up to the screams of shepherd 𝖭𝖑𝖋. His reindeer herd had been torn apart. The bodies of the animals were scattered across the snow. The blood had frozen in thin streaks, and the air smelled of iron and fear. The tracks leading from a sheepfold were deep, wide, and ended abruptly near the edge of the forest, close to the path that descended to the house where 𝖭𝖏 lived. The villagers quickly gathered, with faces tense and eyes troubled. "A bear," someone said. "It's not a bear," 𝖭𝖑𝖋 answered. "A bear tears, but it doesn't tear like that. Look at these wounds, they're clean, like fangs." "Then a wolf," another murmured. "A wolf doesn't do that. And if there had been a pack, we would have heard it." A heavy silence fell over the gathered group. The wind began to rise slowly, moving the bare branches of the trees, like ghostly arms. People turned to each other, looking for an explanation, a culprit. And then their gaze stopped on the path that led to the stranger's house, 𝖭𝖏. The word had not yet been spoken, but it floated between them like a shadow. When Ilya heard the news, he ran to the scene of the attack. He knew animal tracks better than anyone, and what he saw made his blood run cold. The tracks weren't wolf tracks. They were bigger, heavier, but also more elegant, as if the beast that had made them carried a controlled, conscious power. He bent down, touching one of them. The snow was still slightly melted around it, a sign that the track was fresh. Behind him, 𝖭𝖑𝖋 and the others were murmuring. "It leads straight to the stranger's house," someone said. "You never know," Ilya said, standing up. "The tracks could lead anywhere." "Anywhere, but they don't lead to the forest, they lead to people. And since she came, trouble has been a constant." Ilya turned suddenly, his gaze becoming sharp. "Enough. Stop spreading nonsense. She is a woman alone, not a monster." But deep inside him, a thought began to move, slowly, like a shadow under the ice. Last night, 𝖭𝖏 had disappeared from her bed. She had only returned at dawn, her clothes wet and her eyes red, saying that she had been restless and had gone out for a walk. He had not asked her anything then. Now, with these marks under his eyes, the question burned him in silence. 𝖭𝖏 was standing at the window when he returned. The morning light was trickling down her pale face. "I know," she told him before he could speak. "Something happened, didn't it? 𝖭𝖑𝖋's flock. Attacked. Torn apart." She blinked slowly. "Wolves. There are no wolf tracks." "Then what?" Ilya came closer, looking at her hands. They were clean, but under her nails there was a fine shadow, like a trace of earth mixed with dried blood. She closed her eyes for a moment, then said, "𝖭𝖏, tell me the truth." She turned to the window, avoiding his gaze. "What truth do you want?" "That sometimes I feel different. That sometimes, at night, I hear the call of the wind and smell the smell of blood more clearly than I should. That's all. Maybe more. But I can't say." Ilya reached out and cupped her cheek. "I love you, 𝖭𝖏. But if there's something about you that I can't understand, tell me now." "You wouldn't want to know," she whispered. That moment, a howl was heard from the forest, long, broken howl that made the windows shake. 𝖭𝖏 shuddered. "He's my brother," she said. "What?" "Nuri, he's calling me." Ilya took a step back. "Your brother? But you said he was dead." "He's not dead. Just lost." She stood up, quickly getting dressed. "I have to go." "No, 𝖭𝖏," Ilya shouted, grabbing her arm. But her skin was cold, almost unworldly. When she looked at him, her eyes were slightly luminous, yellow, like a beast's. "Please, let me go," she said. "What are you?" For a moment, everything stopped. The fire in the stove crackled softly, and the wind whipped against the walls of the house. 𝖭𝖏 lowered her gaze. "I am what should not exist. The day is yours, Ilya. But the night, I am the forest's." Then she ran into the snow, leaving him behind, his heart broken and his mind full of questions. That night, Yaransk did not sleep. The howl was heard again, closer to the village, and people locked themselves in their houses. The women made the sign of the cross, the men sharpened their axes. The children cried silently on the outskirts of the village. Near Grigory's barn, something moved through the snow, a white shoulder. An agile figure, with almost human movements, young boy, Ivan, spotted the beast and threw a torch. The light caught the creature's face for a moment, a white she-wolf with yellow eyes, but in those eyes there was a deep, human pain. "I saw it," he shouted. "The she-wolf is the woman. It's Sayan." The next day, the news spread like wildfire. Women were talking at the doors, men were gathering with frowning faces. "She's a witch. A beast sent by the forest. She brought death with her." Ilya tried to stop them, but the crowd's voice was louder. "If you love her, then you are like her," they told him. That moment, Ilya understood that his love could no longer protect her. The village wanted her dead. In the evening, he went alone into the forest, determined to find her before the others. He walked for hours through the snow, following those large, deep tracks that he had recognized, and at a clearing, he saw her. Sayan stood there, in the middle of the snow, her fur white and her eyes shining under the moon. He approached, and the beast retreated, but did not run away. Sayan, the she-wolf, trembled. Then, before his eyes, her body began to change. Her bones contorted, her fur receded, and in a few moments, the woman stood before him again, naked and trembling. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked, his voice breaking. "Because I would have lost you. And now I'm losing you anyway." She rested her forehead on his chest, and he wrapped his arms around her, no longer caring about anything. "If humans are hunting you, I'll go with you." "No, Ilya, you're human. I can't be any more." Far away, in the forest, another howl was heard, louder, deeper. "Nuri!" The call of the pack. Sayan broke away, looking into the depths of the forest. "I must choose, Ilya, but not yet. Not until I find out who I really am, beast or woman." She disappeared between the trees, and he remained on his knees, his hands in the snow, feeling for the first time the true weight of love, that love that does not save, but burns everything. And the village, torches were lit. People were preparing to hunt, and the forest, wolves were rising, and among them, alone and torn, walked Sayan, the She-Wolf of Yaransk, carrying in her blood the curse of light and darkness. Chapter 4. The Marriage. The snow continued to fall on Yaransk like a silent blessing. After weeks of unrest, the village seemed to have found a fragile peace, one that hovered between reality and dream. The attack of the herd had been forgotten, or at least so the people wanted to believe. The wolves had not shown themselves anymore, and the wind no longer brought the howls of the nights of terror. In the midst of this cold silence, unexpected news swept through the smoke-covered houses. Ilya, the forester, was to marry Sayan, the stranger. Those who had heard the news froze, as if an unseen force had frozen the air between them. Sayan was still viewed with suspicion, a beauty that came from nowhere, with amber eyes and a gaze that seemed to pass beyond people. Many considered her cursed, others simply unnatural. And now, Ilya, the village boy, the brave and good forester, wanted to take her as his wife. For him, the decision had not been an easy one. Between love and fear there had been a terrible struggle. But in the end, Ilya had chosen love, although he knew that, with it, he was also embracing mystery, and perhaps destruction. The marriage proposal took place on a quiet evening, when the wind blew gently through the tall fir trees. Ilya had taken Sayan to the edge of the forest, where the snow was melting around a warm spring. The steam rose like spirits, and the moonlight danced over her face. "Sayan," he told her in a trembling voice, "I know that you are not like the others, but I cannot look at you without loving you. You have brought something into my life that I did not know was missing. Maybe light, maybe darkness, I don't know. But without you, I wouldn't be me." She looked at him for a long time, with that sadness that seemed to have been born with the world. "Ilya, if you knew how dangerous this love is." "I don't care," he said. "I want to be by your side, no matter how long it takes, a day, a lifetime, a moment." And that silence, He placed a simple ring in her palm, made of a silver wire that he had shaped himself, and she, with moist eyes, murmured, "Then so be it. But remember, my beloved, if one day my light goes out, don't look for me in the darkness." The wedding took place 3 days later, on a clear winter day. The sky was clear, an almost unreal blue, and the village seemed to have been painted in white and silver. People gathered, more out of curiosity than joy. The old woman at the inn was the one who hosted the bride and groom, a woman who, despite gossip, believed in love and good omens. The wedding was modest, but warmed in a small room, lit by candles and the flames of the stove. 𝖂𝖏an appeared dressed in a white fur dress, sewn by her own hands. The fur was soft, like untouched snow, and a fox fur scarf hung on her shoulders, tied with a red thread, a sign of good luck. When she entered the room, everyone fell silent. Her eyes burned with an unearthly light, of amber and melted gold. She seemed a being descended from another world, too beautiful to be just a woman. 𝖭𝖏𝖏, dressed in a simple coat of thick wool, looked at her as if she were a miracle. The village priest, a sullen and cautious man, made the sign of the cross as he spoke the holy words. There was a hesitation in his voice, as if he feared that the blessing might turn into a curse. "Willingly and with a pure heart, you ask, 𝖭𝖏𝖏, do you take this woman as your wife?" "Willingly," he answered. "And you, 𝖂𝖏an, do you accept this man as your husband?" She smiled, and in that smile there was a deep melancholy. "I accept him," she said, and her eyes lit up like liquid gold. That moment, a ray of sunlight penetrated through the frozen window and settled on her face. Seemed like a divine sign, and for a second, even the most skeptical villagers fell silent with their hearts beating wildly. After the ceremony, people began to sing, timidly at first, then more and more joyfully. Vodka flowed, and wooden tables were filled with smoked fish, black bread, and honey. Children ran through the snow, and a few men, already intoxicated, sang old ballads about hunters and forest spirits. 𝖂𝖏an danced with 𝖭𝖏𝖏 by the fire, and the light of the flames played on her skin. Every movement was smooth, almost hypnotic. The elders watched her with hidden fear in their eyes. Her beauty was not a gift, but a warning. "She is too beautiful for a woman," whispered an old woman. "Her beauty is not like ours," another murmured. "She is from another world." But 𝖭𝖏𝖏 could hear nothing. Him, everything was perfect, and the firelight. 𝖂𝖏an was life itself, gentle, wild, unpredictable. That night, he swore to love her until his last breath. After the party had died down, the two of them retreated to their house on the outskirts of the village. The wind was blowing gently, and snowflakes could be seen dancing through the windows. 𝖭𝖏𝖏 lit a candle, and the flickering light revealed 𝖂𝖏an's face, beautiful as a dream. "You are my wife now," he told her, touching her hand. "Your wife, yes, but also the prisoner of a curse," she murmured. "Don't say that. Your curse doesn't scare me." "You should, 𝖭𝖏𝖏. Tonight I am not what you see now." He touched her cheek. "At night is just another face of light. If necessary, I will love you even in the dark." 𝖂𝖏an smiled and pressed herself against his chest. "Then let me believe that the world is good, at least for one night." They loved each other with a tenderness mixed with despair, as if they both knew that their happiness was just a moment stolen from fate. In the silence of the night, 𝖭𝖏𝖏's heart beat slowly, while her breathing became deeper, heavier. Around midnight, she got out of bed, without saying a word. The moonlight was pouring through the window, covering her body with a cold glow. 𝖭𝖏𝖏 opened his eyes, and for a moment, he saw how her skin was covered with a bluish shadow, how her eyes lit up slightly. She went out into the cold outside, barefoot, and he remained motionless, not knowing whether to follow her or to believe that she was dreaming. Through the window, he saw her silhouette disappearing among the fir trees. Then a deep howl rose from forest, a wolf howl, long and full of sadness. In the morning, 𝖂𝖏an returned. Her hair was wet, and her eyes tired. She smiled, but that smile was empty. "You were there, weren't you?" he asked, without raising his voice. Yes. Why? Because I can't escape who I am. The curse doesn't stop at oaths. Ilya, by day I'm yours, but by night. The forest calls to me. He closed his eyes, trying to control his pain. Then I'll learn to love you too, and the she-wolf. She smiled again, this time sincerely. Maybe one day you'll learn to listen to the call too. In the days that followed, the village began to talk again. Some said that Ilya had sold his soul. Others, that the woman brought him luck, because the forest had become gentler, and the winds no longer tore the roofs. But every night, the light in their house went out early, and a howl could be heard in the forest. Alone, but full of longing, suffering, and love. And so, under the icy sky of Siberia, Sayan and Ilya lived a love that defied the world, a love born between light and darkness, between man and beast. For some, it was blasphemy. For others, a legend. For them, however, it was simply life. Chapter 5. The First Night. The moon had risen slowly over the frozen horizon, huge, cold, and white as a silver coin. Its light spilled over Yaransk, over the frost-covered roofs, over the forest that stretched beyond the village, a sea of shadows and deep silences. That night, the sky was clear, and the stars seemed like the eyes of a world that looked back, judging mortals. Sayan stood on the threshold of the house, her shoulders covered with thick fur, watching the moon rise over the mountains. Her heart was beating irregularly. She felt something old, dormant, waking up in her blood. An uneasiness smoldered in her bones, a burning that rose from her chest to her throat. Ilya slept inside, exhausted after a day of work in the forest. In that silence, the only sounds were the crackling of wood in the stove and the slow beating of the wind. But Sayan knew. The curse never slept. The spirit of the forest had told her, years ago, before she chose the path between the worlds, as long as the moon looks at you, you will carry its fire within you. The darkness and the light will each pull you to one side. And one day, you will forget who you are. Those words always followed her, like a cursed prayer. On full moon nights, she would wake up trembling, her body burning with fever, feeling her skin tighten, her breathing deepen, her thoughts lost in instinct. She had tried to fight. She had tried to believe that Ilya's love was stronger than the call of the forest. But that night, something changed. It was the first full moon after their marriage. The first night the curse would take its toll. The wind began to blow harder. The doors creaked softly, and the candle flame in the room went out suddenly. Sayan stood up, startled. She felt the heat in her body grow, like a burn under her skin. Her fingers clenched on the edge of the table, and a wave of pain shot through her spine. No, not now, but the moon was watching her, white and merciless. Her skin wrinkled, her veins bulged, and her heart accelerated so hard that it almost broke her ribs. Her breathing turned to gasps. She felt the taste of iron on her tongue, and her eyes suddenly lit up, flashing the yellow of wolves. Then came the pain, a silent howl that tore at her throat but didn't come out. She fell to her knees, feeling her body break and recompose. Bones cracking under her skin, fingers lengthening, nails sharpening. In an instant, the world dissolved. All that remained was instinct, thirst, cold, and the smell of blood in the air. And then, silence. When dawn came, Sayan woke up lying in the snow, near the edge of the forest. She was naked, covered only by hair and traces of clotted blood. The air cut her skin, and her breath came out in heavy steam. She opened her eyes and saw the deep, large tracks left by her paws, the tracks of a she-wolf, her tracks. Her hands trembled as she touched the red spots around her. Blood. Lots of blood on the snow, on her skin, on her lips. She felt the metallic taste and vomited. Then a heavy smell hit her, the smell of flesh and death. Behind a pine trunk, she saw the bodies point two hunters, torn apart. Their faces were full of deep scratches, and their clothes were torn. One of them had his eyes open, his gaze lost in the sky, as if he had seen something he wasn't supposed to see. Sayan felt his knees go weak. No. Not me. But he knew. Somewhere, deep down, he knew. The curse had taken its toll. He crawled through the snow to his house, each step a wound. When he entered the door, Ilya found himself scared. "Sayan! What happened?" He wanted to answer, but his voice wouldn't come out. His eyes filled with horror when he saw the bloodstains. He ran towards her, thinking she was injured, but she pulled back. "Don't touch me!" Ilya stopped, not understanding. "Who did this to you?" She shook her head. "No. I don't know," but inside her, the wolf's voice howled. She fell to her knees, crying, shaking all over. Ilya covered her with a blanket and held her tightly in his arms, asking no questions. But there was fear in his eyes, a silent fear that was beginning to grow, like a crack in stone. By noon, the news had spread. 2 hunters had been found dead in the forest. The beasts had torn them apart. People were talking about a huge beast, about a white wolf, about a curse. "It was one of our own," an old man was saying, his voice trembling. "I saw the tracks. It was big. Bigger than any wolf in the north." "Maybe it's the same wolf that killed the herd last month," said another. "Or maybe it's something worse," a woman murmured. Their gazes turned, inevitably, to the house on the edge of the village, 𝕐𝖗𝖃, and the evening, when Ilya returned from the villagers' meeting. His face was pale. "They started talking," he told her. "They say the beast has amber eyes. That they saw a white shadow running between the fir trees." Sayan felt his heart stop. "And what do you think, Ilya?" He hesitated. I don't know what to think. I love you, but something is happening. Tonight you get up, you leave, and in the morning you return trembling." She approached him, tears in her eyes. "If I told you the truth, would you believe me?" "Tell me," he demanded. But she was silent. She knew that once told, the truth would break everything. The next night, Sayan lay awake, trembling. She tried to bind herself to the earth, not to let the call overwhelm her. She knelt by the window and looked at the sky. "Spirit of the forest," she whispered, "why did you choose me? Why can't I be just one, a woman or a she-wolf?" But the sky did not answer her. Only the moon shone brighter, like a judge's eye. When the first shiver passed through her, she knew there was no escape. Pain broke her silence, and her body broke again under the curse. Then everything became white, sparkling, animalistic. In the forest, the wind howled. The she-wolf ran, free, but with a rage that did not belong to her. Her senses were sharp. She could hear the heart of the prey. She could feel the blood flowing under the skin of others. She saw the world in shades of smells and shadows. But, deep inside her, a voice was crying, Sayan's voice. "Stop. Please." The beast stopped, for a moment, near the frozen spring. The moon was reflected in the water, and there, in the trembling reflection, Sayan saw her human face, covered in blood. The she-wolf howled to the sky, a howl of pain and guilt. The next day, people had stories to tell again. Another hunter had been wounded, and the tracks led again to the edge of the village. Sayan collapsed into Ilya's arms, exhausted, with dry tears on her cheeks. "I have to go," she told him. "I can't stay here." "No," he said, trembling, "we'll find a way. I'll take you to the priest, to the healer, wherever." "It's not a disease, Ilya, it's a curse. I'm the beast." He wanted to contradict her, but her silence stopped him, and her eyes. The light was slowly fading. Outside, the moon was rising again, and the cold air. The wind echoed a howl, long and heartbreaking, howl that carried within it the guilt, the love, and the loss of a woman who no longer knew to whom she belonged, the light or the darkness. And in Yaransk, people began to lock their doors earlier. Because from then on, it was said, the night was no longer safe. Chapter 6. Suspicion. The frost had become master over Yaransk. The snows rose up to the knees, and the wind howled through the chimneys, bringing with it a strange, almost human, trembling. The forests were getting dark early, and the village lived in a tense silence. People spoke less and less, but looked more and more towards the house on the edge of the village, where Sayan and Ilya lived. After the death of the 2 hunters, nothing had been the same. Fear had taken hold of everyone's souls. Every evening, the men gathered around the fire in the inn and talked in whispers, Sipping from steaming glasses, tea was said that, on moonlit nights, a white figure roamed the streets, a giant she-wolf, with amber eyes. That sometimes a long howl could be heard, which seemed to come right from Ilya's yard. The elders said that it was a sign of a curse, that a being from other worlds was hiding among the people. That the spirit of the forest sent his beast to avenge the cut trees and the animals killed, and every time the name Sayan was spoken, a heavy silence fell around the fire. Sayan felt the eyes on her. Wherever she went, the women stopped working, the children fell silent, and the men pulled their hats over their eyes. They looked at her as if she were an apparition, a ghost who had crept from the forest into their lives. At first, she had tried to ignore her. She would go out in the morning, help the old woman at the inn with the bread, carry water from the well. She would smile at those who looked at her with disdain, believing that gentleness could drive away fear. But nothing changed in their eyes. She was still a stranger. Tonight, she would lock herself in the house and lie awake, listening to the wind beating against the window's point. One of those nights, Ilya got up and turned on the lamp. "I can't sleep any more," he said. "Are you afraid?" "Not of you," he answered after a pause, "of the others." Sayan looked at him with deep sadness. People feel what they can't understand. And when they don't understand, they hate. He approached her and touched her cheek. "I don't hate you." "Not yet," she murmured, eye in her eyes. The flame of the lamp reflected like a living light, but in the depths of her gaze there was an anxiety that Ilya could not explain. The next day, when he went to the village, the women moved aside. When he passed the well, one of them, a young woman with black hair, crossed herself and whispered, "May God protect us." Sayan stopped, looking at her calmly. "Why do you say that?" "Because last night I saw her," the woman said, trembling. "A white she-wolf, right in your yard. I swore I would keep quiet, but I can't. She had your eyes." Sayan remained still, and the snow seemed to stop falling. "Maybe you're dreaming," she said in a low voice. "I wasn't dreaming," the woman said. "She came to the fence and looked at me, and I swear I felt her looking through me." The other women murmured among themselves, frightened. Sayan pulled her shawl over her shoulders and left without a word, her steps deep in the mud. In the evening, Ilya returned home with a heavy look. "Have you heard what they're saying in the village?" "Yes," she answered. "They say the white she-wolf comes from our yard. That we sheltered the beast that killed the hunters." Sayan was silent. His hands were shaking, but his voice remained calm. "And you? What are you saying, Ilya?" "I say it's nonsense." "But—" He stopped. But that night, I saw you leave, and in the morning, she stood up suddenly. I told you I don't know what happened. The curse doesn't stop because I want it to. I didn't want to kill. I don't blame you, Sayan. But people don't need proof. They just need fear." She closed her eyes. Tears slowly rolled down her face. "Then fear will kill us both." And the days that followed, the tension in the village grew. Children were kept indoors after sunset, and men walked around with torches and axes. Every sound in the forest, every howl of the wind was interpreted as a sign of the beast. The village priest, a man with a long beard and a cold gaze, began to preach about women of sin, about changeable beings, about those who walk at night under the sign of the moon. Every word of his was a seed of hatred, and the people listened to him. At the end of the service, the women made the sign of the cross, and the men muttered, "The devil hides in the body of a woman." One night, when the wind was blowing harder than ever, a group of villagers came silently to their gate. A white figure, which seemed to float on the snow. One of the men dropped the torch from his hand. Did you see it?" The figure stopped and turned. For a moment, the fiery eyes of the she-wolf looked straight into his soul. Then, the beast disappeared between the fir trees. "There is no doubt," said one, "It is she." In the morning, people were already talking about Ilya's she-wolf. Some said that she had been seen entering the house. Others swore that Sayan did not age, that her eyes looked like those of an animal. They said that she brought misfortune, that since she came, hunters die and the forest howls at night. The most daring began to demand her expulsion. If 𝖭𝖗𝖏 does not want to throw her out, then the village must do it. One of the men shouted. 𝖭𝖏𝖏 tried to defend her. She's not a beast. She's my woman. But his words no longer carried weight. People no longer listened to reason. They listened to fear. When he got home, he found 𝖂𝖏𝖗 standing at the window. Her face was pale, and an old fatigue could be read in her eyes. "I know what I'm saying," she murmured. "The smell of their fear is everywhere." "I'll convince them," he told her. "You can't convince a man who chooses to believe in monsters, 𝖭𝖏𝖏." She stood up and walked over to him, touching his hand. "Promise me something if it comes to bad things. Don't try to defend me." "How could I not defend you?" "Because then he would kill me, and you.He cupped her face in his hands. "I don't care about death, I'm just afraid of losing you." She smiled bitterly. "Maybe you've already lost me. Half of me is no longer here. The half that loved the light dies every night." The next night, 𝖂𝖏𝖏 dreamed of the spirit of the forest. A gentle but sad voice echoed in her mind. "The soul that lives between two worlds will never be loved by both. People fear what they cannot understand, and animals cannot forgive what they have lost. You chose to live between them, and now both will tear you apart." 𝖂𝖏 woke up crying. 𝖭𝖏𝖏 slept next to her, his hand on her chest. She looked at him for a long time, as if she wanted to memorize his face, to keep it for the day when everything would end. Outside, the wind stopped for a moment. Then, in the distance, a howl was heard, a single, long, deep, that made all the dogs in the forest the village began to bark. And suddenly, the silence of Yaransk was broken. The next day, the people gathered again. The body of a woman had been found at the edge of the forest, torn apart. 𝖭𝖏𝖏 went there, his heart heavy, and recognized her. She was the young woman at the well, the one who had accused 𝖂𝖏 of having wolf eyes. Everyone turned to him. "Tell me, 𝖭𝖏𝖏, who else could have killed her?" He fell silent, and for the first time, he could no longer say the words he had always said, "It's not her." In the silence that followed, the snow began to fall again, covering the traces of blood. And in that silence, Yaransk understood that their fear finally had a name, 𝖂𝖏. Chapter 7. The Spirit's Memory. The night was deep and silent over Yaransk. The frozen sky arched over the village like a glass dome, and the moon, full and white, illuminated the snowfields to the horizon and the small house at the edge of the forest. 𝖂𝖏 lay awake. She could not sleep. Beyond the window, the wind brought an old murmur, like a forgotten song, and her heart seemed to recognize that rhythm.T was the calling. Ever since the deaths and the rumors had appeared, 𝖂𝖏 had felt the curse in her blood grow stronger. Every night she would find herself trembling, feeling the beast inside her awaken. If first she could control it, she would breathe deeply, cling to the image of 𝖭𝖏𝖏, to his voice, to the warmth of their home. But now, she felt weaker and weaker. The fire in the hearth flickered weakly. 𝖭𝖏𝖏 was sleeping, his forehead buried in the pillow, exhausted after a hard day. 𝖂𝖏 slowly got up, grabbed a fur coat and went outside. The cold air took her breath away. She looked out at the forest, a mass of shadows and silver light. "I can't any more," she whispered. "I can't fight myself any more." And then, in the middle of the silence, she felt something.Da presence, an unseen touch. The snow moved gently around her, and the wind swirled as if in a dance. From the darkness, a light rose slowly, like a living flame. From it emerged a tall, transparent figure, with eyes shining like stars. 𝖂𝖏 knelt, tears filling her eyes. Why did you leave me between the worlds? Why didn't you take my curse when I asked you to?" The spirit's voice came gentle, but full of echoes. "It's not a curse, child of the wolves, it's your gift and your burden. But I can't live like this anymore. People hate me, and every night I feel the blood burning in my veins. I'm afraid I'll hurt the one I love." The spirit came closer. Around him, the snow melted, as if all winter had stopped to listen to him. I told you once that you can't run from who you are. You can only choose who you hurt. The words pierced his soul like an arrow. Sayan closed his eyes. Who should I hurt, spirit? Him or me? The spirit was silent for a moment. Those who forget that love has fangs. Then he disappeared, leaving behind only a whirlwind of light that dissipated in the wind. Sayan was left alone, her heart beating wildly. She felt something breaking inside her. Her whole life, everything she had fought to be, woman, wife, human, now seemed like a fragile mask, a thin skin over a beastly soul. And yet, in that fear, she also felt an old power, a kind of deep calling. When she closed her eyes, she heard the howl of the pack. Nuri's voice, Tarak's voice, the voice of all the lost. Sayan, you are not alone. The wolf's blood does not die. It sleeps in you. She collapsed into the snow, shivering. Her body contorted, and from the depths of her being a cry rose sharp, a mixture of pain and release. For grew on her arms, bones changed under her skin. In a few moments, the woman was gone, and her place, a white she-wolf, with golden eyes, stood under the moon. Her breath came out in steam, and in her chest beat a double heart, half human, half wild. She raised her head to the sky and howled. A howl. Not of terror, but of memory. Of calling. When she returned home, dawn was just beginning to break. Ilya was waiting for her in the doorway, his gaze clouded. Where have you been? She didn't answer. There was snow in her hair and torn clothes. Her eyes shone in a way that made him take a step back. You were there, weren't you? In the forest. Sayan closed his eyes. I can't explain it to you, Ilya. There are things you won't understand. Try me, he said, his voice trembling. I believed in you when everyone else hated you. Just tell me it's not true, that it wasn't you who killed those people. Her silence was heavier than any answer. I don't know, Ilya, he whispered. I don't know what I do when the moon rises. I'm not me anymore. There's something else. There's someone else inside me. Ilya put his hand to his forehead, overwhelmed. Then we have to get out of here. We have to run, Sayan. She shook her head. You cannot run away from what you are. The spirit's words echoed in her mind, with a bitter echo. The next night, the dream returned. But this time, it was not just the spirit. From the shadows of the trees, Nuri, her brother, appeared in the form of a wolf. His gray fur shone under the moon. His eyes looked at her with the gentleness of an old longing. Sayan, he said, why did you choose this pain? Because I wanted to love. And you forgot that love cannot bind two worlds. She fell to her knees. I can't live without him, Nuri. You can't live with him either. Around them, the forest trembled. The trees murmured words of wind. You have always been the bridge between humans and beasts, her brother told her. But bridges break when one world hates the other. She looked at him, and her tears mingled with the snowflakes. What should I do? Listen to the spirit. Choose. When she woke up, it was morning. Beside her, Ilya slept restlessly on the wooden table, his torch still burned, a sign that he had been on guard all night. Sayan got up and approached the window. Beyond the village, the forest shone in the sun. He touched the cold glass and smiled bitterly. I cannot run away from what I am, he murmured. But I can choose. At that moment, a cry was heard from the village. A child had disappeared. Dogs were howling, and people were gathering with torches. Ilya suddenly stood up. What's happening? A beast has taken the child. Someone shouted from the street. His gaze turned to Sayan. She stood still, pale. Tell me it's not. She covered her face with her hands. I don't know. Oh, Ilya, I don't know any more. He ran out, and she was left alone, with the echo of the spirit in her mind. You can only choose who you hurt. She fell to her knees. The fire in the hearth went out, and with it, the warmth in the house. Sayan finally understood the words of the dream. She could not escape what she was, but she could choose, to hurt the man she loved or to hurt the world that condemned her. and in that silence she decided. She put on her white fur coat, went outside, and headed for the forest. The moon was beginning to rise in the sky. When the first howl rose from the depths of the forest, 𝖭𝖆𝖗 stopped running. He recognized 𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐻. Was her voice, a mixture of pain, love, and heartbreak. That night, the spirit of the forest smiled through the branches. The wolf woman had chosen her path. And for the first time, Sayan no longer ran from herself. She chose to become the entire curse, and between the moonlight and the darkness of the snow, she was reborn as the She-Wolf of Yaransk. Chapter 8. The Red Night. The sharp winter wind crept through the cracks of the houses in Yaransk, bringing with it an eerie silence. The snow had fallen over the village like a shroud of death, and the moon, large and full, was slowly rising above the forest, bathing everything in a bluish light. That night, the silence tasted like blood. A girl had been found at the edge of the forest, her body white as ice, her eyes closed, and on her chest, deep fang marks, all around. The snow was torn, a mixture of tracks, some of wolf, some of human. 𝖃𝖐 was the proof the villagers had been waiting for. Proof that the beast lived among them, and in the middle of the village, a crowd had gathered with torches and axes. Voices rose, full of anger and fear. The white she-wolf. It's her, that strange woman. The damned one who came from the forest. 𝖭𝖆𝖗 was trying to stop them. Enough. We have no proof. You don't know what you're talking about. But the crowd was no longer listening, and in their eyes, fear mixed with hatred. On long winter nights, any story becomes truth if it is told with enough horror. Sayan watched them from the shadows, from the window of their house. She knew. She felt the truth burning in her blood. She didn't remember the whole night, only fragments, broken images, the hot taste of blood, the snow melting between her paws, the scream of a young voice. Then silence. She had woken up at dawn, her clothes torn and her hands covered in mud and blood. 𝖭𝖆𝖗 had found her trembling, and she had told him that she had injured herself in a forest. But something new had appeared in his gaze. Sayan now stood in front of the mirror. Her face, so beautiful and peaceful during the day, seemed foreign. There was a strange golden glow in her eyes, like a half-extinguished flame. She touched her cheek. Slowly, tea was cold. "What am I becoming?" she whispered. The spirit of the forest had not spoken to her since then. The silence between them had become a painful void, and dreams were filled with shadows, screams, and blood. That evening, 𝖭𝖆𝖗 came home with heavy steps. Carrying a torch, he slammed the door. "The people want to catch the beast, Sayan. They have formed a pack. Tonight we are going into the forest." She stood up suddenly. "No. Don't go. I have to. I can't let them kill every creature they find. You know how they are when they are afraid. They will set fire to everything." She approached him and took his hand. "You don't understand. This night is not like any other. The moon is full." 𝖭𝖆𝖗 looked at her, and in that silence, everything was said without words. "Sayan, tell me the truth." She lowered her gaze. "I can't." He took a step back. The torch trembled in his hand. "Then don't lie to me. Just tell me, are you the beast?" Tears welled up in his eyes. "I don't know, 𝖭𝖆𝖗. Sometimes I feel like someone else lives inside me. When the moon comes, I'm not me anymore. I can't lie to you." For a moment, he wanted to hug her, but the torch between them separated them. "Stay here," he said finally. "If people come, don't open." And he left, leaving her alone with the shadows. The night fell heavy and bright. Steam rose from the forest, and the trees cracked under the weight of the ice and the village. Torches lit the streets like red stars. The villagers walked in groups, shouting, agitated. Sayan collapsed to her knees by the window. "Spirit, help me, I don't want to hurt anymore." But the spirit didn't answer her. Only the wind stirred, carrying a long, heartbreaking howl from the forest, and then it broke. The fire in her body woke up, burning through her veins. She felt a terrible pain, her bones broke, her muscles stretched. Fur grew on her arms, claws pierced her skin, and a howl that broke the silence of the village. The woman disappeared. And the white she-wolf rose, and the forest, 𝖭𝖵𝖗 and the other hunters walked through the trees. Their weapons raised. The snow crunched under their feet. Here! Someone shouted. Footprints! Big footprints! The footprints led deep into the forest, to where the frozen river made a bend. 𝖭𝖵𝖗 followed them, his heart heavy in a corner of his mind. He hoped that it was all a mistake. But when he saw the white fur peeking through the branches, his heart broke. The she-wolf turned. Her eyes, golden, deep, full of sadness, looked straight at him, and in an instant, he knew 𝖊 was her. "Don't shoot!" she shouted. "Don't shoot, it's—" But it was too late. One of the men fired, and the bullet tore through the air. The she-wolf collapsed with a groan, but got up again, running through the trees. 𝖭𝖵𝖗 ran after her, leaving the others to follow him with cries. The snow turned red under their steps, and the sky, the full moon, looked like an open wound. The she-wolf stopped in a bright clearing. She was breathing hard. Blood was dripping from a wound in her shoulder. 𝖭𝖵𝖗 approached slowly. 𝕐𝖆𝖗, her eyes recognized him. He took a step towards him, but from behind him other footsteps were heard. People were coming, with torches, with weapons, with fear. Then the she-wolf raised her head and howled, a howl of pain, of love and separation. Then she threw herself into the darkness, disappearing among the trees. 𝖭𝖵𝖗 tried to follow her, but the forest closed in around him. A cold wind rose, and from somewhere, very far away, another howl was heard, deeper, older. 𝖊𝖗 was Nuri. The lost brother had felt the call of blood. Morning came over Yaransk with a heavy silence. The villagers found only blood and mixed tracks. Neither beast nor woman, and no one knew what to believe. But in their hearts, fear had turned into faith. The she-wolf was alive. 𝖭𝖵𝖗 turned at home, broken, on the table. He found an iron amulet in the shape of a wolf. He hadn't made 𝖊𝖗. He hadn't been there the day before. On the back, a single word was engraved: "Forgive me." He understood. 𝕐𝖆𝖗 was still there, somewhere in the shadows. He went out into the yard and looked at the forest. The moon had disappeared, but the howl remained in the air, floating like a prayer. 𝖊𝖗 was called the Red Night, and the people of Yaransk would remember it for years to come. But for 𝖭𝖵𝖗, that night was the end of a love and the beginning of a legend, the story of a woman who loved a man and lost the fight with the moon, and in the frozen forests a white she-wolf ran free, carrying in her heart the memory of the man who had loved her enough not to hunt her. And sometimes, when the wind blew from the mountains, a gentle howl could be heard, like a broken promise: "You still love me. I hear 𝖭𝖵𝖗." Chapter 9. Tarak. In the neighboring village, beyond the deep forests and endless snows of Siberia, Tarak made his living with his hands, making metal sing under the hammer. His forge was small, but the fire in the hearth burned constantly, reflected in his eyes, which, once wild and bright as a wolf's, now bore the calm and patience of a man. The years spent as a human had transformed him. Tarak no longer felt the call of the pack, but he still felt the invisible connection with the forest, with the wind, with his brothers. That day, as the snow fell softly over the roofs of the village, a stranger entered the blacksmith shop. He was a merchant in traveler's clothes. His eyes tired from the journey, he held a letter in his hand, which he handed to him without saying a word. Tarak looked at the paper. The words were short, but he felt them like shards of ice in his heart. Yaransk, the Red Night, 𝖐𝖆𝖗, wounded, blood. Take care of her. His heart tightened. His eyes filled with anger, fear, responsibility. 𝖐𝖆𝖗, his sister, had been the one who had once played in the forest with him and Nuri. Now her name was linked to death, to roar, blood. He put down the hammer, the sound of metal mixing with the silence of the forge. He felt his hot blood pushing him to leave. He was no longer the beast he had been. He could no longer run through the free forest, but he still had the strength of his hands, the knowledge of fire, the courage of a man who had never forgotten what loyalty meant. Tarak raised his head, looking at the window that lit the room with falling snowflakes. He felt the call. The same call that Nuri and 𝖐𝖆𝖗 had felt, but now different, the call of duty, of love, of Brotherhood, he knew it wouldn't be easy. Yaransk was covered in fear and hatred. Sayan was cursed, a beast that people spoke of with horror. And yet, Tarak could not stand aside or let his sister get lost in the blood and howls, to be hunted, judged, and condemned without justice call? No, not now, not ever. And yet, doubt weighed on his heart. What if, indeed, Sayan had been responsible for the crimes? What if her wild nature could not be controlled even by her love for Ilya? But Tarak knew he couldn't think like that. He couldn't let fear decide for him. The only way was to go. He packed his bags quickly, a bag of clothes, a well-hidden knife, and an amulet he had worn for years, a small symbol of the wolf, reminding him of who he was and where he came from. Before he left, he looked back at the forge. T was the place where he had been transformed from wolf to man. The place where he had learned patience and silence, but the place where the desire for freedom had never died on. The way, Tarak felt the forest wind, cold and sharp, bringing him the smell of snow and pine. He felt the movement of the shadow, the echo of the howls, an old shiver that reminded him that he was not alone. Nuri was there, Sayan was there, and the connection between them never broke, no matter how far away. Reaching the edge of the forest that surrounded Yaransk, Tarak slowed down. The village seemed quiet, but beneath that silence was hidden fear, the tension of the people, the torches prepared for the hunt. His eyes they headed toward Sayan's house. He knew that she was there, between two worlds, between man and wolf. He knew that every step he took brought her closer to him, to protection and hope. Memories of childhood ran through his mind, Sayan running through the fir trees, laughing, full of life, Nuri playing with them, their imaginary packs, their first howls under the moon. Everything seemed so simple then, before the worlds fell apart, before the curse of the forest spirit changed them irreversibly. Arriving near the village, he felt his sister's call, a kind of pulse in the air, a hiss of the wind that told him that she was waiting for him. He knew that entering Yaransk would not be simple. The people would not see the brother who came to help, but a fighter ready to confront the beast. But Tarak was no longer just a wolf or just a man. He was the bridge between worlds, bearer of knowledge and power, protector of the family and the pack that bound them. And, regardless of what he would find in the village, he knew that he could not turn his back, and his heart, a decision crystallized, no matter the fear of people or the risk of being hurt, no matter whether his sister had made a mistake or not. It was time to be Tarak, the blacksmith who shaped not only metal, but also the destiny of his loved ones. That night, the forest fell silent, giving way to Tarak's footsteps, who approached Yaransk with a heavy heart, but with a prepared spirit. The howl of the pack was no longer in the distance. It was inside him, held close to his chest, reminding him that loyalty is never forgotten, and the family defends itself until the last breath. And so began the journey of Tarak, the brother, the man, the wolf, who had to bring order in the midst of chaos. Yaransk was waiting for him, with shadows, with fear, and with the blood dripping onto the snow. But Tarak knew only one thing. He would not let anyone touch what he had always loved, his family and his sister, Sayan, the she-wolf who lived between two worlds. His steps merged with the night wind, and in every beat of his heart he felt the call of his sister and the knowledge that what was to come would change everything. He moved forward without fear, because a true brother never lets his family fall. Yaransk did not yet know that he would witness the return of Tarak, the blacksmith who carried within himself the strength of the pack and the justice of a wolf. And that night, the moon, full and white, seemed to light the way to their common destiny. And the wind of the forest whispered, "Tarak is coming, the howl is approaching." Chapter 10. The Meeting. The forest around the village of Yaransk was covered in a thick blanket of snow. The branches of the trees bent under the weight of the ice, and the wind blew hard, bringing a continuous murmur that seemed to pierce his soul. The night was complete, and the full moon rose like a silver saucer above the village, illuminating the frozen streets and roofs of houses with a cold, almost crystal light. Tarak's every step creaked in the snow. But he did not stop. His sister's call was like a hot pulse in his chest, a cry that only he could hear. When he entered the village, the silence was oppressive. The houses seemed deserted, but he knew that people were hidden inside, their eyes fixed in the darkness, listening for every sound. Bright torches in the distance illuminated a window, and some doors creaked in the wind, like delayed breaths. Tarak had his hands in his pockets, but he could feel the old wolf claws trembling in his blood. He finally found her near the edge of the forest on a narrow path that led to an old abandoned inn. She was shivering all over, and her clothes were wet with melted snow. Her eyes were wide and full of fear, but when she saw him, a hint of recognition lit up her face. "Tarak," she murmured, her voice trembling. "You shouldn't have come." He leaned towards her, letting his gaze search her in the darkness. "Sayan, I couldn't stay away." "What happened?" She crossed her arms, as if trying to protect herself from the whole world. Everything got out of control tonight. When the moon rises, I'm not me anymore. I feel like the beast inside me is waking up. I try to keep it in check, but—" Tarak clenched his fists. His heart was beating fast, and the wolf instinct, still alive in him, pushed him to fight, to protect, to bring order to the chaos. "Sayan, listen to me. It doesn't matter what happened. It doesn't matter what people think. I'm here. I will protect you. Even if I have to face the whole village." Her eyes filled with tears. "What if I hurt them? If I can't control myself anymore, what do I do?" Tarak came closer and grabbed her by the shoulders. "Then we will be together. We will fight together. No one will be able to hurt you as long as I am by your side. I am your brother, Sayan. Our blood is connected, and nothing will change that." She looked down and pressed herself against his chest. His heart was beating fast, and her own beat seemed to synchronize with his, and that moment, she felt an old and forgotten feeling. Safety wasn't just physical protection, but something deeper, an anchor in the middle of the storm that was her life between worlds. "I don't want to lose you," she whispered. "I can't lose you, Tarak." He pulled her closer, his voice low but determined. "You won't. I can't lose you. No matter what you become tonight, I will be here. Even if I have to face the whole world, fight the whole village for you, I will not let anyone touch you." Sayan closed her eyes and felt the fear and guilt inside her mingle with love and gratitude. She leaned against her brother and, for the first time since she had left for Yaransk, she felt that she was not alone. The moon was reflected in her fur, which seemed to pulse in the bluish light, and her wolf and human blood vibrated in the same rhythm. Tarak knew that he could no longer be just a simple man, a blacksmith far from his native forest. Instinct told him to fight, to protect the packs, to preserve the bond between man and wolf. He remembered his oath made to the spirit of the forest years ago, to guard the border between the worlds, to be the bridge between beast and man. Now that oath took on complete meaning. "We will find a way, Sayan," he said in a firm voice. "You are not alone. We will face whatever comes, no matter what people say, no matter how dark the night is, we will be together." She looked up at him, and her eyes, full of gold and a mixture of fear and hope, shone in the moonlight, and that look, Tarak saw not just his brother, but the wolf, the man, the protector, and the ancient bond between them, and that look, Sayan recognized part of herself. That she could love, that she could be protected, and that even in a world that judged her, there could be a place to be between two worlds without being condemned. Slowly, Tarak and Sayan walked together towards the forest, not knowing what was coming. The village, the people, the rumors, all were shadows around them, and in the middle of that cold night, they were not just brothers. They were fighters against fate, a unity between man and wolf, a bond that could not be broken, and in the sharp air, they felt the first howl, a cry of the pack, a warning and a call at the same time. It was Nuri, the brother who had remained a wolf, who had felt his sister's call and who, without knowing it, was approaching. "Tarak, Sayan," whispered the wind through the trees. "There is no going back." Tarak squeezed his sister's hand. "We will not return. We will fight together." And so, that night, the brothers began what was to be a battle between worlds, love, curse, brotherly duty, and the instinct to protect. The full night stretched above them, and the moonlight seemed to bless them, but also to remind them that every choice had its price. Under the full moon, 𝖂𝖏an and Tarak set out towards a destiny in which blood, howl, and love intertwined, a story of the she-wolf and her brother, of man and beast, the beginning of a confrontation that would shake the village of Yaransk and even confront the forces of the pack and people. That night, their meeting was not just a reunion, it was an oath. No matter what came next, brother and sister would fight together. Between two worlds, between blood and heart, between curse and love, and in the silence of the forest, the full moon of the snows, he watched their hearts howl. Chapter 11. The Hunters. The snow covered the village of Yaransk like a thick, white, cold blanket, and the full night had transformed every corner into a scene of mystery. The wind brought with it the smell of burning wood from the stoves of the houses and of the wild animals that took shelter in the nearby forest, but above this apparent silence hung a heavy tension, a shiver of fear and hatred that vibrated in the air. The villagers knew that the beast, the white she-wolf that the rumors spoke of, was close, and that someone had to stop her in 𝖭𝖆𝖗's house. The silence was oppressive. His heart beat chaotically, mixing the love for 𝖂𝖏an with the responsibility he felt for the people of the village. For several nights, rumors of night attacks had spread like wildfire in the forest. The torn bodies of the animals, the mixed tracks of man and wolf, the frightened looks of the children, all this they made 𝖭𝖆𝖗 feel he had to act, even though his heart trembled at the thought of hurting 𝖂𝖏an. "We can't wait any longer," he said, his voice sharp. "If we don't do something, the beast will continue to attack." People began to gather in the village square, each carrying torches, axe handles, and bows. They were experienced hunters, but none of them truly knew what awaited them. But their fear made them braver than reason. 𝖭𝖆𝖗, with a broken heart, joined them, aware that the path he was following had no way of turning back. At the same time, 𝖂𝖏an felt in his blood the call of the pack, the desire for freedom, and the hunger of his instincts. The full moon shone over the forest, and with the first shadows of night, she felt the transformation begin to consume her. White fur covered her arms and back, claws tore at her skin, and her senses amplified, escaping the control of human consciousness. Fear, love, and the desire to flee mixed in a violent chaos. Feeling the footsteps of the people approaching, 𝖂𝖏an decided to flee. Each of her steps in the snow was light, almost invisible, but the strength and agility of a wolf made the tracks difficult to follow. The villagers scattered in groups, shouting and waving torches, but the forest was a labyrinth where only the beast knew every turn and hiding place. 𝖭𝖆𝖗 remained behind for a moment, watching her go. Her heart was torn, anger and fear fighting with love. I'm stopping, but I don't want to hurt him," he thought, as he followed the footprints deep in the snow. 𝖂𝖏an's every step was a mixture of grace and danger, and 𝖭𝖆𝖗 felt that, despite his good intentions, the situation had gotten out of control. The villagers, driven by their fear, were beginning to understand that the hunt was not just against an animal, but against a being that carried their memory, the beauty and mystery of the wild world. Every step in the forest turned into a tense dance. Between man and wolf, between love and hate, between instinct and reason. 𝖂𝖏an ran through the trees at a dizzying speed, feeling his blood pulsing strongly in his veins. His survival instinct was strong, and every sound, every movement of people, triggered his defense reflexes. However, a corner of his mind remained connected to Tarak and 𝖭𝖆𝖗, feeling their care and love like an invisible thread that held her anchored to her humanity. The footsteps of the people were approaching, their noise echoing through the heavy branches of ice. 𝖂𝖏an stopped for a moment, looking back at the village. Her golden eyes shone in the moonlight, full of anger, fear, and pain. Her woman's heart and wolf instincts merged in an incredible tension, and the decision she had to make was painful: to hide, to run to protect those she loved, or to face the people and risk losing her soul in the darkness. 𝖭𝖆𝖗, feeling his heart break, ran after her, shouting, 𝖂𝖏an, don't run! But his voice was lost in the wind. The she-wolf hid among the fir trees, disappearing almost completely into the shadows of the night. 𝖭𝖆𝖗's heart tightened with every step, and he knew that his love for 𝖂𝖏an would push him to do the impossible, to protect her even when other people condemned her. The villagers continued to search for traces, but the forest was unforgiving. Branches were breaking, the snow was crunching under 𝖭𝖏𝑖an's invisible claws, and every step of the hunters was a threat to both her and themselves, and 𝖃𝑗. Every trace of blood and snow became a testimony to the struggle between man and beast, between love and fear. As she ran, 𝖭𝖏𝑖an felt the presence of the forest spirit whispering to her, reminding her of her connection to the wild world. Don't forget who you are. Don't lose your soul in the darkness. But the hunter's call was strong, and adrenaline accelerated her every movement, every step of the she-wolf, every heartbeat of the hunter, and every careful glance of the village intertwined in a spiral of tension, violence, and emotion. The end of the night, 𝖭𝖏𝑖an was already far away, invisible among the fir trees, snowy, but her presence was felt in every leaf, in every shadow, in every sigh of the wind. The howls of the pack had not yet sounded, but they were close, and the real confrontation was only just beginning. Every inhabitant of Yaransk now knew that the beast was among them, and Ilya felt the burden of an impossible choice, to follow her heart or to protect her duty. At the same time, 𝖭𝖏𝑖an felt that her freedom was tied to their survival, and that no matter how strong the night, love could be stronger than fear. And so, the Night of the Hunters became the legend of the beginning of the struggle between 𝖭𝖏𝑖an, her brother Tarak, her lover Ilya, and the world of people who did not understand what it meant to live between two worlds, between man and wolf. Their howls, invisible but palpable, began to echo in the forest, announcing that no one could control what they did, not understand. And, somehow, everyone knew that their destiny had changed forever. Chapter 12. Nuri's Call. The wind blew fiercely across the tundra, raising waves of snow that danced like lost spirits. The sky was covered with heavy clouds, and the frozen ground trembled under the footsteps of a pack that crossed the white wilderness. Their head, with gray fur like the shadow of stone and green eyes like the depths of the forest, ran Nuri, the lost brother, the one who had chosen to remain a wolf forever. But in his heart there was a living memory, an invisible thread that connected him to the people he had loved, to 𝖭𝖏𝑖an, his sister, and to Tarak, the brother who had shared his dreams and struggles. For months, Nuri had lived far away, among the silent mountains and endless hunts, leading the pack with a wisdom that came from both worlds, that of man and beast. But one night, when the full moon rose over the frozen peaks, something changed. An ancient sound, an echo that seemed to come from the very heart of the earth, penetrated his bones. It was a long howl, mixed with pain and calling, a cry of blood, of the bond between brothers. Nuri stopped suddenly. The wind whipped his fur, and the pack stopped too, looking at him with disbelief. His head lifted to the sky, his ears pricked, and his eyes shone, and that moment, he knew, 𝖭𝖏𝑖an was calling him. Not with words, but with his heart and his mind. The image of his sister came back clear, her warm smile, her delicate hands, the gentle voice that once sang songs by the fire. But also her gaze, when she chose to live between two worlds. He had warned her that the spirit's curse does not break, it only moves. And now, the echo of her pain touched him like an open wound. 𝖭𝖏𝑖an, he muttered, but instead of words, a long howl came from his throat, full of longing and sadness. The pack responded, but he was no longer theirs. He had broken away from the world of beasts and set off on his own path. The journey to Yaransk was long and hard. The snow reached his belly, and the frost froze his breath, but he did not stop. He followed a path that only old wolves knew, over frozen lakes, through forests full of shadows, over hills where only the wind knew how to sing. Along the way, strange visions haunted him. 𝖭𝖏𝑖an in a white dress, covered in blood, Tarak with a hammer in his hand, shouting his name, people burning torches and climbing into the forest, hunting what they could not understand. Each image pushed him further. Each heartbeat reminded him that the bond between them could not be broken, neither by time nor by distance. One night, when the blizzard stopped and the sky cleared, Nuri caught sight of the northern lights, a green and blue streak dancing across the black sky. She closed her eyes and felt the spirit's voice again. She is suffering. People will destroy her, but her heart still calls for you. Go, brother of the wind, and break the chain between light and darkness. Then she knew that it was not only her sister's call, but also the spirit's will. She ran all night, and her howl echoed over the mountains, gathering the beasts, stirring the birds, and striking fear in the hearts of the people. As she approached Yaransk, the smell of the people became clearer to her. She could smell the smoke, the honey, the sweat, and the fear, a smell she had never forgotten. She knew that the people were hunting Sayan, and her blood he was seething at the thought that his sister was being hunted like a beast. Dawn, he reached the hill above the village. From there he could see the snow-covered roofs, the smoke rising from the chimneys, and the torches still burning in the middle of the market square. The air held the tension of an unfinished hunt, and his heart, anger and love mixed like fire and ice. He began to approach slowly, without a sound, smelling the traces of blood and the footsteps of people. Among the trees, the snow kept the story of the night, hurried footsteps, wolf tracks, drops of blood. He recognized the scent of his sister, sweet and wild, and the tears almost froze on his fur. Nuri stopped at the edge of a clearing. There, in the middle of the snow, he saw the tracks of a she-wolf who had fled, then disappeared. Her scent was mixed with fear, but also with regret. Then she knew Sayan was running not only from people, but also from herself. She raised her head to the sky and howled. Not a hunting howl, but one of calling, of connection. The echo crossed the forest and reached the village. The dogs began to bark, the horses to neigh, and the people were frightened. Some said, "The wolves have returned." But Sayan, hidden in an abandoned hut at the edge of the forest, suddenly opened her eyes. Her heart jumped, recognizing the sound. It was her brother's voice. Tears ran down her cheeks, mixing with the cold. "Nuri," she whispered. For a moment, she wanted to run to him, to hug him, to forget everything. But she knew he was a danger to everyone. Still, the call was too strong. That night, Sayan came out of hiding, following the sound of the howl that guided her like a thread of light in the darkness. When they met, the wind stopped. Nuri appeared from the trees, large, imposing, with fur full of ice and eyes green as spring. She fell to her knees, tears turning into small crystals on her cheeks. The wolf approached and touched her forehead with his muzzle, and that moment, a holy silence was born between them, a bond that transcended words. "I can't escape, Nuri," she said in a whisper. "It's my curse. Tonight, the beast comes out. People hate me. Ilya, I don't know what he feels anymore." Nuri murmured softly, a deep and understanding sound. "You can't run from who you are, but you can choose who you protect," was the same truth the forest spirit had said before. Sayan understood. Her tears flowed more forcefully, but this time not from pain, but from liberation. She looked at the sky, then at her brother. "Then stay with me, Nuri." "Until the end," he nodded, and their eyes met in a silent covenant. That night, Nuri's pack approached the edge of the village. The people, frightened, erected barriers and fires, preparing for the worst. Ilya, torn between love and duty, looked at the forest without knowing that among the shadows, two brothers found each other, one human, one beast. But bound by the same blood, Nuri's call was no longer just a reaction to pain, but a promise that he would not let the world separate them. He knew that the final confrontation between instinct and love, between fear and truth, was coming. And when dawn came over Yaransk, the wind carried the echo of two souls united beyond forms and worlds. Chapter 13. The Night with Two Moons. The sky above Yaransk seemed torn between two worlds. The northern lights poured over the village like a sea of vivid green and blue light, and above it, the full moon shone, perfectly round, like an all-seeing eye, and beyond it, another moon, smaller reddish, seemed to rise from the ground, reflecting the snow bloodily. The frightened villagers gathered in their houses and closed their windows. But for Sayan, that night was no coincidence. It was the final call of the curse that could no longer be. Hidden in their house on the edge of the forest, the fire burned weakly. Ilya stood by the door, looking at his wife, who was trembling. For days he had felt her changed, silent, restless, like a beast caught between the fangs of an invisible trap. Her eyes, once gentle, now they sparkled with strange reflections, gold, that lit up in the firelight. "Sayan," he said, his voice trembling, "what's happening to you?" She didn't answer. He looked through the misted window at the sky, where the two moons stood suspended, one above the other, like two hearts beating in the same body. Silent struggle, a deep pain, was red on her face. "I can't explain it to you, 𝖭𝖵𝖵," she whispered. "But you have to leave." He took a step towards her, his hands trembling. "Leave?" "No, Sayan, I won't leave you alone. Whatever happens, we'll face it together." She turned to him, and her eyes suddenly lit up in a yellow, animalistic light. "You don't know what you're saying. If you stay, I'll hurt you." The wind picked up, blowing hard through the chimney. The flames rose, and the house creaked like a living creature. 𝖭𝖵𝖵 moved closer, placing his palms on her cold cheeks. "I love you, Sayan. Whoever you are." She closed her eyes, feeling his touch, but also the trembling of her body, which was beginning to change. A shiver ran down her back, a bittersweet pain that took her breath away. Her knees gave way, and from the depths of her being a sound was heard, a deep, primal grunt. 𝖭𝖵𝖵 took a step back. His gaze was fixed on her, but he no longer saw the woman he had loved. White fur was beginning to grow on her arms, her nails were sharpening, her bones were cracking, transforming under her skin. Her hair turned silver, and shiny fangs extended from her mouth. Her eyes widened, round and hypnotic. The transformation was so beautiful that it terrified you. A green light, the reflection of the aurora, played on her fur, making her seem like a creature born of ice and dream. Sayan rose to all fours, breathing heavily, and her clothes tore under the power of the metamorphosis, and the place of the woman, a majestic white she-wolf, with amber eyes and steaming breath, stood in the middle of the room. 𝖭𝖵𝖵 fell to her knees, the fire in the hearth illuminated her face, and fear and fascination froze her expression. She was no ordinary beast, she was in every movement, in every look. She felt the heart of the woman who had smiled at her, who had held him in her arms, who had whispered words of love to her. Sayan approached him slowly, with heavy steps, trembling between instinct and memory. His scent, the man she loved, invaded her senses, and the beast in her howled for blood. But her female soul screamed at the same time, "Don't hurt him." The howl turned into a painful moan. The she-wolf raised her head and howled at the ceiling, a sound that shook the walls of the house. 𝖭𝖵𝖵 remained motionless. Tears ran down her cheeks. "Sayan, if you are still there, fight." She stopped, in her eyes. For a moment, recognition lit up. The world of the animal and the world of the human merged for a split second. Then, with a leap, she broke the door and fled into the night, under the two-moon sky. The wind was hitting her, but she did not feel the cold. She was running across the snow, free, torn, howling at the sky. After her, 𝖭𝖵𝖵 came out into the snow, barefoot, calling her name. "Sayan, come back." But all he got back was the echo of her scream, which intertwined with the light of the aurora. Other people could already be heard from a village, alarmed by the noise. "The beast has appeared again." Some shouted, "Let's take our weapons." 𝖭𝖵𝖵 remained motionless, looking at the sky. A struggle was going on in his heart. He knew what he had seen. His woman, his love, had turned into a monster. But how could he condemn her, when he knew that the beast was also her? In the forest, Sayan ran through the trees, her fur wrapped in the light of the aurora, as if it were made of heaven. Every step was a prayer, every breath, a punishment. A war was raging inside her. One part wanted to run away forever, to get lost in the forest. The other wanted to return, to ask for forgiveness, to be a woman again. When she stopped near a frozen lake, she saw her double face in the mirror of the ice. Half woman, half she-wolf. Aurora was reflected in her gaze, and tears froze on her fur. "Spirit of the forest," she whispered in her mind, "why did you curse me to feel love and hunger at the same time?" But the answer came not. Only the wind passed over the lake, whispering an old song, that of those who live between the worlds. Above, the two moons lit the sky like two opposing hearts, one of silver, the other of blood. 𝖵 was the night of two moons, the night when the world of men and the world of beasts overlapped, and the boundary between them was melting. 𝖭𝖵 stood at the edge of the forest. Listening to her howl, he understood that he could not stop her. Not that evening. And, for the first time, he did not raise his gun, knelt in the snow, watching the light of the sky cover her. "Run, my love," he said softly, "but do not get lost." The next day, the villagers found the tracks, wolf tracks, mixed with the bare footsteps of a woman, and no one knew what to believe. Some said that the beast had kidnapped her. Others, that Sayan was the beast. But 𝖭𝖵 said nothing, and in silence, he looked at the sky, where two spots of light still melted into each other, like two souls that refused to part. For him, that night had not been a woman's curse, but proof that love could exist even between a man and a shadow. For Sayan, however, the night of 2 moons would become the beginning of the end, the moment when love united with instinct, and the beast within her began to demand blood not only from the curse, but from pain. Aurora gradually disappeared, leaving behind the clear and cold sky. But in the heart of the forest, Cyania's howl resounded again, not from anger, not from hunger, but from longing. Chapter 14. The Curse of Love. The sun was slowly rising over Yaransk, bringing a pale, cold light that stretched across the forest like a sheet of ice. The snow shone in 1,000 reflections, and the air bit into the skin with a harshness that reminded everyone that winter is unforgiving, and the village. People were still talking about the previous night, about the strange aurora, about the 2 moons, about the white beast that had been seen running among the fir trees. But 𝖭𝖵 was not listening to anyone. He had only one desire, to find Sayan. He had taken his thick fur coat, his bow, a few pieces of bread, and a bottle of water frozen to the brim. He left before the village woke up, silently passing through the knee-high thorn bushes. The wolf tracks from the previous night were still visible, a trail of deep footsteps, separated by human tracks. He followed them, his heart beating erratically, fearing not what he might find, but what he might lose forever. The wind blew hard, throwing snow crystals into the air like shards of glass. Every now and then, 𝖭𝖵 stopped, listened, but the forest was silent. Only the ravens still moved through the air, circling over silent places, and one of those places, he caught sight of something, spot of red in the white snow. He approached, his steps trembling, and there, between 2 trees that had been knocked down by the storm, he found Sayan. She lay in the snow, covered in a thin layer of ice and blood. She was human again. Her naked body covered in scratches, she was breathing hard. Her hair was matted, her lips were purple, but she was alive. 𝖭𝖵 fell to his knees beside her, putting his hands to his face, her cold. "Sayan, do you hear me?" She opened her eyes slowly, and the yellow light in her irises faded, leaving behind a human, cloudy hue. "𝖭𝖵, why did you come?" "Because I can't leave you." He took his thick coat out of the bag and wrapped it around her, shivering. Then he carefully lifted her into his arms, like a child. The warmth of her body penetrated his skin, but it wasn't human warmth. There was something strange, like an energy that pulsed between them, like a hidden flame. He took her to an abandoned hut at the edge of the forest, one that hunters sometimes used in winter. He lit the fire, scooped up melted snow water, and washed the wounds on her arms. Some were deep, others looked like bites, as if she had been attacked by other beasts. When he was done, he stood beside her, watching the flames reflect on her pale skin. Sayan opened his eyes and murmured, "You should have left me there. The curse will come back on you." He smiled sadly. "Then let him come. I don't care about the curse." She turned her head to him, and in her gaze love and fear mixed. "You don't understand, 𝖭𝖵. The beast in me doesn't 𝕾𝖊𝐻𝐻 controls me. When the moon appears, I could kill you without wanting to." He took her hand and brought it to his chest. "Then let me be the one you hurt. If this is the price for your love, I'll pay it." For a moment, the silence between them was complete. The flames crackled, the wind whistled outside, and between them, in the frozen air of the hut, something sacred and forbidden could be felt. 2 souls, one human and the other beast, united by pain. Sayan slowly rose, leaning against the wall. Her skin trembled under the touch of the cold air. "When the beast took me, I felt my love for you burning inside her. The curse is not just a punishment, 𝖭𝖵𝖗. It is a connection between light and darkness. Every feeling I have for you feeds it. The more I love you, the wilder I become. He moved closer and touched her forehead with his. Then let me be the light that holds her in check. Sayan burst into tears. Tears froze on her cheeks. You don't know what you are saying. If we continue like this, the world will condemn us. A man and a beast cannot be together. 𝖭𝖵𝖗 smiled bitterly. The world has never asked me what I can or cannot love. He remained like that, holding her close, and she, breathing weakly, sank into his arms. Night came over the forest again, but now there was no aurora, no second moon. Only the stars, cold and silent, watched over them. When Sayan woke up again, the fire was almost extinguished. 𝖭𝖵𝖗 was sleeping next to her, his head resting on her knees. She looked at him silently, and a deep pain awoke in her heart. If I loved him less, I might be free, she whispered. But my love is the chain and he is the key. She stood up, stepping outside, barefoot. The cold air burned her feet, but she didn't care. She looked up at the sky. The moon was full again, silver, silent. She raised her arms, praying in a whisper, Spirit of the forest, if my love is a sin, take my heart, but let him live. The wind passed over her, bringing an echo, an old, deep voice. Love cannot be broken without blood. Your choice will bind you to him forever. Sayan collapsed in the snow, trembling. At that moment, she felt something change inside her. She was no longer just the cursed beast, but also the woman who understood what was to come. She turned to 𝖭𝖏. 𝖭𝖵𝖗 woke up and looked at her in amazement, her eyes sparkling, but not in the golden hue of the beast, but in a warm light, like the flame of the sun. What happened? He asked. She leaned towards him and touched his lips with hers. I bound you to me, damn why curse flows through you now. He pulled back slightly, confused. What does this mean? It means that when I transform, you will feel everything I feel. The pain, the hunger, the fear. You will no longer be just a witness, but part of the beast. 𝖭𝖵𝖗 remained silent for a while, then smiled with a sadness that cut through the air. Then I will never be alone again. She rested her forehead on his chest. You don't understand, this love will destroy us. But he closed his eyes and said softly, almost like a prayer. Or it will save us. Outside, the wind stopped. The forest remained silent, as if listening to their covenant. That night, a new bond was born between man and beast, a forbidden oath, sealed by suffering and love. When dawn came, 𝖭𝖵𝖗 felt something strange, a warmth in his chest, a pulsation that was not his heart. In an instant, he understood. The bond was real. He felt its trembling in his mind, like a double beat. Sayan slept, quiet, but a bitter peace was red on her face. The curse of love had begun. That day, for the first time, the forest did not seem a place to be feared, but a shrine. The snow, the trees, the wind, all were witnesses to a story that surpassed the world of humans. But in the shade of the trees, far away, a pair of yellow eyes watched them. It was Nuri, the wolf brother. He had felt the bond created between man and beast and knew what it meant. Their love would bring not salvation, but blood. Because no curse accepts being defied. And, while 𝖭𝖵𝖗 held Sayan in his arms, not knowing what was coming, the forest held its breath. The curse of love had been spoken, and from now on, their love was no longer just a feeling, but a sentence, an oath that would burn the world if one of them ever tried to break free. Chapter 15. The Howl in the Dream. The wind cut the air like a blade. Above Yaransk, the clouds moved heavily, hiding the moon, and between the frozen trees a strange murmur could be heard, not the wind, but something deeper, older, an echo of nature. It was the call of the pack. Far away, among the forests and ice-covered rocks, Nuri ran. His silver fur was covered with snow, his breath came out in steam, and his eyes, the same amber eyes as his sister's, burned in the night. For days he had felt restless. In his dreams, he had heard Sayan crying, calling him, asking for help. Every night she howled, and her howl was lost in the darkness, But this night, the call had been different, desperate. Around him, an entire pack ran in silence. They were the sons of the wolves of the forest old, the descendants of those who had once worshipped Sayan as the white she-wolf. They felt her blood, their ancestral bond. When Nuri raised his head and howled, they answered him as one. "It's time," the howl seemed to say. Man has broken his oath. Yaransk, torchlight danced between the snow-covered houses. The villagers had gathered in the square, around a wooden and iron cage, where Sayan stood chained. Her hair was dirty, her eyes hollow with fatigue, but they still burned with that yellow light of the curse. An old hunter, Ivan, approached and said, "I found her by the river, covered in blood. She's the beast, I tell you." The people murmured, some making the sign of the cross. "Neither man nor beast. It's the work of the devil." Ilya, who stood further away, his coat wet and his eyes red from sleeplessness, said nothing. He was afraid to look at her. Part of him still loved her, but the other, the one that had heard the stories of the torn bodies, was afraid. When their eyes met, Sayan smiled faintly. "I told you the curse would destroy us," she whispered, almost voiceless. He wanted to approach, but the hunters blocked his way. "Stay away, Ilya. The beast will bewitch you again." That moment, a gust of wind passed over the village. The dogs began to bark. Then there was a strange silence. Not a bird, not a leaf, not even the wind moved. It was the silence before the howl. A loud, deep, long sound tore the air in two. It came from the forest, but it seemed to come from everywhere. The dogs collapsed to the ground, crying. The people looked at each other, their faces white. "The wolves," someone whispered. "The wolves are coming." From the darkness, two yellow eyes appeared, then others, dozens, hundreds. The forest itself seemed alive. Nuri stepped first into the torchlight. He was huge, bigger than any wolf they had ever seen. His fur gleamed with silver reflections, and in his eyes there was not anger, but an old primitive pain. The villagers raised their spears. "Shoot him!" Ivan shouted. But before any of them could fire, the pack poured out of the forest like a storm. The wolves jumped over fences, broke down gates, and rushed at people with unstoppable force. The screams mingled with the howls of the beasts, the crackling of wood, and the howling of the wind. Ilya rushed towards the cage, trying to open it. Sayan looked at him in astonishment. "What are you doing?" "I'll get you out of here." But the chains were thick, nailed to the ground. "You can't," she said in a low voice. "It's no use anymore." From behind him, a wolf jumped, knocking down a hunter. Ilya turned in fright, and then, in front of him, Nuri appeared. The wolf brother and the man looked at each other for a long time, without a sound. Recognition was read in Nuri's eyes. He slowly approached the cage, and Sayan stretched out his hand through the bars. "Brother!" He pressed his muzzle to her palm, and at that moment, a strange light passed between them. The chains crackled. The iron began to redden, as if fire had come from within. People began to scream. "Witchcraft! The demons have come!" The chains broke. Sayan stood up, and white fur began to cover her body. The transformation was faster than ever. In a few seconds, in front of them was no longer a woman, but the white wolf, her eyes shining in the darkness. She howled at the sky, and the sky answered her. The pack stopped for a moment, listening to their queen. Ilya remained on his knees, watching them, unable to move. For a moment, horror and love mixed in his eyes. He remembered the woman who had kissed him under the aurora, but before him now was the beast of legends. Sayan turned to him. In her gaze there was gratitude, but also a silent separation. "Run, Ilya, I can't stop what's coming." He shook his head, refusing. "I won't let you." But the wolves began to push him, to force him back, protecting him from the pack's fury. And the center of the village, fires burned. Houses were ablaze, screams mingled with howls. But in the midst of the chaos, Sayan and Nuri moved like two united shadows, she white, he silver. They did not kill without reason. They struck only those who had raised their weapons. The wolves did not come for blood, but for liberation. Under the weak light of the moon, Tarak arrived. He had ridden all night, feeling the call of the pack in his chest. When he saw the village burning, he understood. The curse had returned. He dismounted and shouted, "Sayan! The she-wolf has returned." Her sister's face appeared in her eyes for a moment. Tarak raised his hands. "Stop! That's not how you break a curse." But Nuri stepped between them, growling. For a moment, the three brothers looked at each other. Each was half beast, half man, each lived between two worlds. And yet, the bond between them was stronger than anything. Sayan took a step toward Tarak, then roared a long, heartbreaking howl that made the sky tremble. The wolves stopped charging, the humans stopped screaming. T was a howl of pain and love. A howl that said everything that could not be said. Tarak knelt, and Nuri moved closer to his sister. Their heads touched, and the light in their eyes merged into a blinding flame. When it dissipated, the wolves retreated into the forest. Nuri led them, and Sayan, in the form of a she-wolf, paused for a moment at the edge of the village. Ilya, full of ashes and tears, looked at her. "I love you even so," he said, trembling. She let out a short howl, almost a sigh, then disappeared into the forest, next to her brother. Behind them, Yaransk remained in ruins, and the people, although frightened, could not deny what they had seen. The wolves had not killed for pleasure, but for justice. That night, in everyone's dreams, the same echo was heard, the howl from the dream, the voice of a woman who lived between worlds, praying that love would no longer bring death. And somewhere, far away, in the depths of the forest, Sayan, Nuri, and Tarak were reunited for the first time in years. But the joy was bitter, because everyone knew that the curse of love had not yet been lifted, but only postponed. The forest was sleeping heavily, and the wind carried the howl of the pack through the mountains, like a prayer, like a warning. Who plays with the balance between man and beast will pay in blood and love. Chapter 16. The Fire of Yaransk. The wind howled over the mountain ridges, carrying with it the smell of smoke and blood. The village of Yaransk, once silent and covered in pure snow, now burned like an open wound in the heart of Siberia. The wooden houses crackled under the flames, and the sky was red, like a living wound. The fire rose to the stars, and from it came the screams of people and the howls of wolves, mixed in a single symphony of despair. Tarak, riding his black horse, reached the icy road. His heart was beating wildly, and every breath was a stab. He could smell the burning in the air, but also something deeper, the smell of the pack, the smell of his sister. When he caught sight of the first flames in the distance, a silent cry caught in his throat. "Too late," the wind whispered to him as he entered the village. The image before him was a nightmare. Wolves ran between houses, villagers struck them with axes and spears, women ran screaming. The snow that had once glittered under the moon was now red, mixed with ash and blood. Embers rose into the air like a shower of fallen stars. Tarak jumped off his horse and ran through the rubble. He called out his sister's name, but the answer came in the form of a howl that made the earth vibrate. He stopped. On the roof of a burned house, the silhouette of a white she-wolf stood, her eyes burning, covered in sparks. Around her, the wolves moved like shadows. Sayan, the name came out of his mouth like a prayer. The she-wolf looked at him. For a moment, there was no flame between them, no death, no curse. Only the warm gaze of his sister, trapped in a body that no longer belonged to the human world. But when a villager threw a spear, Sayan jumped, and the wolf's instinct ignited. The rage erupted again. The wolves rushed at the people, defending her. The villagers responded with fire and iron. The screams mixed with the crackling of falling wood. Tarak threw himself into the middle of the fight, shouting, "Stop! Everyone!" But no one listened to him. A woman with a child in her arms was running towards the edge of the village, pursued by two wolves. Tarak raised the iron hammer and chased them away, hitting them with the flat side. The woman fell into the snow, crying. "Go to shelter!" He shouted. On the other side, Ilya tried to put out the fire that had engulfed the inn, but the sparks rose higher and higher. His hair was covered in ash, his hands covered in burns. "Tarak!" he shouted, "You're crazy to come closer." Where's Sayan? Ilya stopped. Guilt was in his eyes. It's there, in the heart of the fire. Tarak turned. The white wolf was fighting 3 hunters, her teeth shining in the firelight. One of the humans fell, the other fled. Tarak ran, calling her name. Sayan! She turned to him, blood dripping down her muzzle. Her eyes burned with suffering. There was a chasm of flames between them, but Tarak stepped through the fire, feeling his fur ignite. He didn't stop. When he was close, he reached out. Turn around, please. You are more than this curse. Sayan took a step back, trembling. The flames danced on her white fur like lines of light. I can't. It's too late, brother. Tarak shook his head, tears streaming down his cheeks. There is no such thing as too late for those who love. That moment, Nuri appeared from the smoke and snow. The huge silver wolf approached his sister, growling at the people. Around them, the pack began to retreat. The people, exhausted, put down their weapons. But the hunters behind did not stop. A spear was thrown and stuck in the chest of a young wolf. Its howl rang out like a cannon shot. The pack exploded in fury again. Sayan threw herself at the hunter, and Nuri jumped beside her. In an instant, the fire turned into an inferno. Tarak, covered in smoke, tried to reach them, but a flaming beam blocked his path. The air was hot, almost impossible to breathe. Nuri! Sayan! Through the whirlwind of sparks, he saw the 2 brothers, one half wolf, the other half man, half beast, fighting together. T was an image from another world, like a living legend. The sky opened for a moment, and the northern lights appeared above Yaransk. The greens and blues mingled with the red of the flames, and the spirit of the forest seemed to watch from above, silent, sad, but present. Then Sayan looked up and roared, a long, deep roar that silenced everyone. The wolves stopped. The people stopped. Even the fire seemed to hesitate. This is not a fight, Tarak shouted. This is the end. Nuri approached him, breathing hard. Blood colored his muzzle. There was not anger in his eyes, but pain. Man and beast will never be one, brother. But we can be the bridge. Sayan approached them, and for a moment, the fire reflected 3 figures, 2 men and a woman, all bound by the same destiny. The flames descended slowly, as if an unseen wind had soothed them. The wolves began to retreat, retreating into the forest, but the village was lost. The houses were collapsing, and the sky was black with smoke. Tarak fell to his knees. There is nothing left to save. Yes, Sayan said, looking at him. The man in you, and the wolf in me. She took a step back. Her eyes lit up again, and her body changed, and a burst of light. White fur covered everything. Before Tarak could stop her, Sayan stood up and ran into the forest, followed by her pack. Nuri followed them silently, but before leaving, she turned to her brother for a moment. You brought iron and fire to the world of men. Tarak, that I brought the howl.It unites them. Remember that. And it was gone. When dawn came, Yaransk was nothing but a smoking trail. From the ashes of the village rose only a heavy silence, like a prayer. Tarak stood alone, hammer in hand, looking out into the forest, knew that the fire had not only been the destruction of a village, but also the rebirth of a curse. Far away in the forest, Sayan howled again. Not a howl of rage, but of pain, a song of lost love and of a world that could not accept what was different. The wind carried the howl to Tarak. He looked up at the pale sky and whispered, "Until fire and snow unite, my sister, I will not forget." And so, the fire of Yaransk was not just the end of a battle, but the beginning of a new legend, that of the woman who loved and the killer, the she-wolf who carried light and darkness in her heart, the soul that never fully belonged to any world. Chapter 17. The Choice. Night had fallen over Yaransk like a heavy sheet of ash. Smoke still rose from the ruins, and the smell of burning wood hung in the frozen air. Amidst this somber silence, the forest rustled as if it were breathing. Beneath the snow-laden branches, Sayan, in her female form, lay leaning against a birch trunk, wounded and exhausted. Her skin was cut, and blood stained the whiteness of her fur dress. Beside her, Nuri, in his giant wolf form, watched over her, breathing heavily. His yellow eyes watched her with silent suffering. Tarak, his hands burned and his coat torn, had finally reached the foot of the forest. He approached slowly, trembling not only from the cold but also from guilt. "Sayan," she looked up. She seemed a shadow of the one who had been, beautiful but broken. Around them, the blizzard was intensifying, and the sky was covered with heavy, leaden clouds. And then, in the middle of the wind, the light began to gather. Out of the darkness, a tall, shining figure emerged, which seemed to be made of liquid gold and green leaves. The wind stopped, and the forest was silent. Even the wolves in the distance lay down on the ground. The spirit of the forest had appeared. "My children," he said, and his voice echoed deeply, like an echo of the mountain. "You have intertwined your fate between light and shadow. You have brought fire between snows and blood between people. But fire does not burn without a spark, and a spark does not burn without a heart." Sayan stood up with difficulty, leaning on Nuri. "Why are you following us, spirit? Wasn't it enough that you tore us apart between worlds?" The spirit bowed his head slightly. "I'm not following you, I'm watching you. What you are now is the fruit of an old choice, made under another moon. I gave you the gift of the wolf so that you could learn to feel what man had forgotten: instinct, loyalty, freedom. But you loved, and love changed everything." Sayan bit his lip, trembling. "Love is not a curse." "No," said the spirit, "but love demands a price. And sometimes the price is who we are." Tarak stepped forward, raising his hand. "If you want to punish someone, punish me. I brought iron among men. I built the weapons that killed." The spirit looked at him with a strange gentleness. "You tried to unite the world of fire with the world of ice. I do not condemn you. But every soul must understand its place." A thunder was heard in the distance. The sky split in two, and lightning lit up the trees. That cold light descended among them like a blessing or a sword. "Listen," said the spirit. "You are offered a new choice." Sayan, Tarak, and Nuri fell silent. The air around them seemed to vibrate. "The curse can be broken," he continued. "But not without a price. Life must be offered for the balance to be restored." Just one, those words cut the air like a knife. Sayan staggered, looking at his brothers. "A life?" The spirit nodded. "The forest requires a soul to close the wound between the worlds. It can be yours, Sayan, the one who carried the curse, or it can be someone who loves you. The choice is yours." A cold wind blew through them. Snowflakes danced, melting before they hit the ground. Tarak stepped forward, without hesitation. "Then take me. I am a man, not a beast. I have nothing more to offer the world. If my life can save my sister, I give it willingly." The spirit looked at him with eyes as clear as a mirror of ice. "Your heart is pure, Tarak, but the curse does not bind you. Your sacrifice would not break the bond, it would only shift the suffering." Sayan took a step forward, tears streaming down his cheeks. "Then let it be my life. I brought death to Yaransk. I carried the hatred of people and killed without permission. Let the others live." The spirit remained silent for a while. The wind stopped again. "Are you sure, daughter of the forest? Once the choice is made, there is no turning back." She nodded. "Yes, I don't want any more blood because of me. I don't want to feel the moon tearing me in two again." But then a howl shook the air. Nuri stood up, and in his eyes was the determination of a wolf who knows no fear. He approached Spirit and spoke in a low, grave voice that shook the earth. "I am the oldest of us. I carry the pack instinct. Take my life, Spirit. Let my sister live among people." Sayan turned to him, stunned. "No. You can't. You are the last link to what I was." "That's why," he murmured, "I can go back to where I came from." The spirit looked between the three, and his face seemed made of pure light. "The choice must be pure, without coercion, without fear." Tarak took a step toward Nuri. "It is not right. You have carried our burden too long." But the wolf looked at him with amber eyes. the same eyes that 𝖂𝖏𝖏 had once had as a child. Every pack has an end, brother. But not every end is a loss. The spirit raised his hand, and a greenish light rose from the ground, like tree sap. The wind began to swirl in circles, the snow rose from the ground, and the air became dense, almost liquid. "So be it," said the spirit. "The choice has been made." 𝖂𝖏 rushed forward, shouting, "No, Nuri!" But it was too late. The light had already enveloped him. His fur turned to mist, and his body dissipated into the air, as if absorbed by the wind, and in its place remained a trail of white light, which melted into 𝖂𝖏's chest. The spirit lowered its arm, and the storm calmed. Snow began to fall quietly, covering the traces of blood. "Balance has been restored," he said. "The curse is over." 𝖂𝖏 collapsed to his knees, crying silently, "Where is he? Where is my brother?" The spirit looked up at the sky. He became one with the wind. Whenever you hear a wolf howl in the night, know that it is him. It was not death that took him, but freedom. Tarak also fell to his knees. "What will happen to us now?" "You will live," the spirit said. "But never forget. Light and darkness cannot be separated, only reconciled. And love is the only bridge." The spirit's light began to fade, melting into the mist. Before it disappeared, his voice echoed again, like a breeze through leaves. "Remember, 𝖂𝖏, that which is torn can only be healed by choice, not by curse." And with those words, the forest fell silent again. 𝖂𝖏 stood there, the snow melting in her hands, looking at the clearing sky and the distance. A soft, long howl crossed the mountains. She closed her eyes, knowing it was Nuri, that there was peace. Tarak came closer, placed a hand on her shoulder, and said softly, "Our brother is not dead, 𝖂𝖏. Only returned home, till dawn, when the first rays of the sun touched the snow. Yaransk slept under a layer of new silence. The spirit of the forest had taken its tribute, but had given in return something more precious, forgiveness. And from the mountain-tops, the wolf's howl ended in an echo of light. Chapter 18. Ilya's Sacrifice. Dawn had not yet risen over Yaransk, and the sky was an open wound between night and day. Smoke still rose from the ruins of the village, mixing with the icy vapors that floated over the frozen ground. The forest, silent, seemed to hold its breath, and in the distance, the wolves were slowly retreating, traces of blood on their fur, and the remaining people looked at the sky. Convinced that the evil was not over, in the middle of this torn silence, 𝖂𝖏 lay stretched out in the snow, between life and death. Her skin was burned, her body covered in cuts, and her eyes, the same golden eyes that once shone with courage, were fading in the gray light of the morning. Tarak held her in his arms, murmuring voiceless prayers. 𝖂𝖏, stay with me, please." But she could barely hear him in her ears. The wind brought another voice, a gentle, deep, familiar call. It was the voice of the forest spirit, mixed with the howling of wolves in the distance. "The price has not been paid yet." Then, from the darkness of the smoke, a figure appeared. Ilya, a strange determination burned in his eyes, a light of a man who understood his mission too late, but did not lose his courage. His clothes were torn, his arm wounded, and his face full of ashes, but his gaze was clear. 𝖂𝖏, he said, slowly approaching. She raised her head, trembling. When she saw him, a tear melted in the corner of her eye. "Ilya, run. The fire will take you too. I am the curse, not you." He smiled, that gentle smile he wore in the days when he taught her to hold a cup of tea or laugh at people's childishness. "I can't run if my love can't save you, then at least set you free." Tarak tried to stop him. "Ilya, no. We don't know what the spirit wants. It could be a trap." But the young man didn't listen to him. He looked at the sky, where the clouds were opening, and from them came a bluish-green light. The northern lights.It shone like a crown over the forest, dancing slowly, hypnotically. "It's the sign," whispered 𝖂𝖏. "The spirit is here." The fire had broken out again on the outskirts of the village, fueled by the cruel wind. The flames rose like hands to the sky, and in their midst, A luminous silhouette began to take shape. T was the spirit, the same face of light that had followed them since childhood. Love chooses, the voice spoke. Not the curse, but love demands a complete sacrifice. Sayan rose to his knees, shouting, "Enough! You took everyone. Nuri, the people, myself. Take nothing more." The spirit approached, his eyes of molten light. "I do not ask. Balance demands. Between man and beast, between light and darkness, one must burn for the other to live." Ilya took a step forward, staring fixedly at the spirit. "Then take me." Sayan turned suddenly to him, terrified. "No. It's not your fault." He touched her cheek, and his touch was warm, almost unreal. "Yes, Sayan, I knew you were different. I knew your eyes hid something older than the world. And yet I loved you. I fell in love with your curse without caring about the punishment. If my love brought you here, my love must also set you free." The spirit silently agreed, and the wind stopped. It seemed that the entire forest was waiting. Tarak wanted to grab his arm, but Ilya pulled away. "Brother, you've protected her all your life. Let me protect her now. Not with iron, but with fire." He turned to the flames dancing at the edge of the forest, where the spirit and the world united in one light, and his steps was read the determination of a man who had found his purpose. Sayan stood up, crying through tears. "Ilya! No. Don't leave me alone again." He stopped for a moment and turned. His eyes were full of tenderness. "You will not be alone. I will be in your fire, in every beat of your heart. And when you look at the aurora, know that I am there." And before Tarak could stop him, Ilya stepped into the fire. The flames immediately engulfed him, but he did not cry out. There was no pain, only light. The fire rose in a spiral, coloring the sky with a white and golden glow. The wind began to howl, and the forest bowed as if under a divine storm. Sayan fell to his knees, screaming his name, but the spirit raised his hand. "Look, daughter of the forest. Love burns only once, but its light never dies." Amidst the flames, Ilya's face transformed. From his flesh and bones rose a pure light, merging with the aurora in the sky. That moment, the bond between Sayan and the beast within her was broken. Pain struck like a sword, an explosion of fire, blood, and memories. Her white fur, which was born with the moon, melted into the air. The wolf's howl echoed for the last time over the forest, then faded. Tarak watched the scene in awe. The flames slowly died out, leaving only a circle of ash and a deep silence. On the ground, where Ilya had been, a trail of white light remained, pulsating like a heart. The spirit of the forest stepped through the smoke, and she stopped in front of Sayana. "The balance has been restored. Through the fire of love, the chain has been broken. You are free." She was crying, trembling, her hands full of ashes. "Free? What does freedom mean without him?" The spirit smiled slightly. "Freedom is not the absence of pain, but the power to live with it." In the silence that followed, the wind began to caress the earth. The snow fell again, covering the traces of blood. The wolves retreated into the forest, and the people of Yaransk emerged from the ruins, looking at each other with fear and amazement. And the sky, the northern lights unfolded like a curtain of living fire, and from its midst a song could be heard, gentle, almost human. Sayan stood up. The light enveloped her, and in her eyes there was no longer the glow of the wolf, nor the fear of the woman. Only peace. She looked at the sky and smiled through tears. "He burned for me, and set me free." Tarak came to her side, his eyes red. "He did it for both of us so that we could all live." The spirit began to fade, his voice remaining like an echo among the trees. "Remember, Sayan, the love of man is stronger than the curse of the wolf, and it lies the very essence of life." When the last ray of light died out, the sky cleared completely. From the flames of the past, only a circle of warm earth remained, untouched by snow. There, Sayan knelt and placed his hand on the ground, feeling a weak beat, like a heart. "She is here, still breathing in the light." Tarak fell silent, looking at her, knew that something else had lit up in her eyes, a new understanding, a deep peace. That night, the aurora danced more than ever. The people of Yaransk later said that they saw a woman's silhouette walking through the snow, illuminated by the green of the sky, and behind her it seemed as if a shadow of fire was walking. But for Sayan, everything was clear. Ilya had not died. She had turned into a flame that lived in the sky, a flame that bore his name and love. And so, the chain between man and beast was broken, not by sword, not by magic, but by the ultimate sacrifice, love that burns, but does not destroy, but purifies. Chapter 19. The White Wolf. The wind blew harshly across Yaransk, bringing with it the smell of ash, smoke, and memories. The village, now silent, was but a shadow of what it had been. The houses were burned, the blackened beams bowed under the weight of the snow, and the air was heavy with a silence that seemed more painful than the howls of the wolves of the previous night. The sky had cleared, but the clouds still wore the greenish-blue hue of the aurora, as if the sky itself wanted to preserve the memory of Ilya's sacrifice. In the middle of that ruin, Sayan walked slowly, barefoot, her clothes torn, trembling with every step. Each breath cut her chest like a blade. A pain burned within her that was not just of the body, but of the soul. It seemed that the fire that had swallowed Ilya had gone out on the outside, but not inside her. That light still burned in her chest, the same one that had given her life and curse. Tarak followed her in silence. He looked at her without daring to touch her. She was no longer the woman she had been, nor the beast she had known. She was something else, a bridge between two worlds, a creature on the edge of existence. "Sayan, you must rest," he told her in a low voice. The spirit said that the curse had broken. "You must not fight any more." She turned to him, and her eyes had a strange, cold, almost unreal shine. The curse had broken for him, Tarak. But not for me. He tried to contradict her, but his words broke in the air. There was something untouchable in her gaze, a deep sadness and at the same time a serenity from beyond the world. "I feel his fire in me," she continued, her voice trembling. "It burns, and with it, everything I am. I can't remain human." She fell to her knees. Her hands dug into the snow, and a deep sigh, almost a muffled scream, came from her chest. The snow around her began to melt, and steam rose from her pale skin. Tarak took a step back, frightened. "Sayan, what's happening?" She looked up at the sky. The aurora had ignited again, dancing over the frozen forest. That bluish-green light was reflected in her tears. "He's calling me," she said with a faint smile. "He's calling me where fire meets ice." Then the ground began to tremble slightly, and from the forest came a long, deep howl. It was Nuri's pack. The wolves were approaching, silent, their eyes shining in the night. They were no longer enemies, they had come as witnesses. Tarak turned and saw them. "No, don't take her again." But Sayan touched his arm, calming him. "Let them go. They know. The forest knows." Then she closed her eyes and lay back. Her body began to tremble, and a diffuse white light began to flow from her wounds. Her skin was covered in fine streaks, like veins of light that pulsed in time with the aurora. Tarak knelt beside her, shouting, "Sayan, fight. Don't go." But there was nothing human in the way she breathed. A light rose from her, like a sacred vapor. Her ribs arched, her body stretched, her bones took shape. With a cruel but liberating sound, the transformation began, and in the midst of the light, the being he knew dissipated, and her place, from ash and snow, a she-wolf was born. White as the moon, her fur shining like silk bathed in the aurora. Her eyes, when they opened, were neither beast nor human. They were two golden suns that burned gently, but infinitely. Deep, Tarak remained on his knees, stunned. Before him was no longer his sister, there was something more. The she-wolf stood up, trembling, and looked up at the sky. The aurora intensified, as if the sky had answered her call. The wolves around her began to howl, one by one, forming an ancestral chorus. Their howl was not of anger, but of sadness and reverence, and in their midst, the white she-wolf stood on a snow-covered rock. The light enveloped her completely, and the snow around her melted under her steps. Tarak felt a tear run down his cheek. "Sayan, is that you?" The she-wolf turned to him. Her golden eyes stared at him for a long time, and that look, he recognized everything: the tenderness, the love, the sadness, the memory of Ilya. Then, without a sound, she approached and touched his hand with her muzzle. A wave of warmth passed through her body. She felt an image, not a word, a silent promise. "Live, I will watch." Then she turned to the forest. The wolves opened in a circle, letting her pass. The auroral light painted her fur in shades of green, blue, and silver. Each step left behind a luminous trace that slowly faded, like a poem of snow. The spirit of the forest appeared again, a translucent silhouette, floating among the branches. "Here is her true form," she said in a voice like a gentle wind. "She is the link between man and beast, between love and death. The white she-wolf, the one who will keep the balance." Tarak stood up, his eyes full of tears. "But she isn't coming back?" The spirit smiled, looking at him. "Her love did not die, but the human body can no longer carry it. The fire burned the flesh, but left the soul free." The she-wolf turned again, for the last time. Aurora arched across the sky like a bridge between two worlds, and from a distance, a luminous shape, a silhouette of fire, was taking shape in the middle of the sky. It was Ilya, or maybe just his memory, mixed with light and sky. The white wolf raised its head and howled. Her howl echoed over the forest, over the mountains, over all the places where they had once lived together. It was a howl that demanded nothing, promised nothing, only said, "Love remains." Aurora intensified, descending as if towards her. The light connected with the wolf's fur, and from that contact, the sky lit up with an explosion of colors. Green, blue, gold, white, a symphony of light dancing across the frozen earth. Tarak fell to his knees, blinded by beauty. "Sayan, daughter of the forest," when the light went out, there was no one on the rock. Only the wind danced through the branches and the snow fell silently. But in the distance, at the edge of the forest, a white shadow could be seen running through the trees, graceful, free, shining. The wolves followed her one by one, and their howls were lost in the night. And Yaransk, the people who survived swore that every winter, when the sky opened and the aurora returned, a gentle howl could be heard coming from the north. The children said that it was the white wolf, the guardian of the forest and dreams. Tarak, old, would later say, "Not all who burn die. Some become light." And indeed, on nights with 2 moons and a sky bathed in aurora, the white wolf appeared at the edge of the village, silently gazing at the ruins of Ilya's house. Her golden eyes sparkled in the darkness, and a light wind brought a scent of smoke and pine, the memory of a love that defied death. There, between fire and ice, between man and beast, the legend of the white wolf was born, the spirit of the forest and the memory of a heart that burned to the end, only to be reborn in the form of light. And so, Sayan did not die. She turned into song, into light, into the wolf that watches silently under the polar sky, carrying in her golden eyes the memory of a love that broke the chains of the world. Chapter 20. The Howl of Love. The dawn of that day seemed to come from another world. The air was clear as glass, and the light, diffused, trickled over the earth covered in ash and ice. Yaransk was silent, and no man, no bird, not even the wind dared to disturb the strange peace that had descended upon the once lively place. Only the echo of wolves, somewhere far away, reminded that the world still breathed. Tarak knelt by the ruins of a burned house, his hands full of soot and his heart heavy. Above him, the sky slowly swirled, covered in thin veils of aurora. Each color seemed a sigh of the sky, the green of the burned forests, the blue of tears, the pure white of snow, the red of love and blood, and in the middle of that silence, Sayan, or what was left of her, climbed to the white wolf seemed part of the sky itself. The light clung to her fur, transforming her into a shining vapor. Her steps left no trace, as if there was no longer any weight between her and the earth. She was spirit, she was dream, she was love itself detached from flesh. Tarak followed her, unable to move. His heart beat irregularly, torn between amazement and pain. Part of him wanted to call out her name, to call her back to her female body, but the other part knew that what he saw was no longer his sister, it was a being who had passed beyond the world. The wolves stood in a circle at the foot of the cliff. Among them, taller and stronger, was Nuri. His silver fur was furrowed with scars, and his eyes, deep and cloudy, shone with a light recognizable only by blood. When the white wolf reached the top, Nuri raised his head. For a moment, there was only the gaze between them. Years of suffering, loss, longing and love were gathered in 𝖂𝖗𝖃, no words, no sound. Then, Sayan raised her head to the sky, and she began to howl. Her howl was unlike any beast's, was a music, a prayer, a pain that rose from the depths of the world, and it was the longing for 𝖂𝖗𝖃, the call to Nuri, the memory of Tarak, the oath made to the spirit, the curse and love. All merged into a sound that seemed to tear the sky apart. The northern lights darkened for a moment, then burst into a brighter light. The colors swirled above the rock like a cosmic dance. The wind rose, carrying the howl over the forest, over the mountains, over the frozen seas. That moment, Nuri answered. His howl, deep and grave, raised from the forest like an echo from the depths of the earth. Two voices, a wolf and a she-wolf, met above Yaransk and united in a song as old as the world. T was the call of blood, of love, of the balance between life and death. Tarak covered his face with his hands. Tears flowed through his fingers. He felt the vibration of the howl in his bones, in his heart, in every memory. For a moment, everything stopped. The village, the wind, the whole world seemed to listen. The people who were still alive gathered at the edge of the ruins, looking towards the rock. No one dared to speak. Everyone had seen her, the white she-wolf, and everyone felt the same tearing in their chests, fear and love. At the same moment, an old woman, the one who had once welcomed Sayan to the inn, fell to her knees. "It's not a beast," she whispered, "it's a blessing." The howl changed, becoming softer, purer. The she-wolf seemed to sing. Nuri joined her closer and closer, and the other wolves began to howl too, one by one. T was a chorus of the forest, of life that refused to die. Tarak stood up. He took a step forward, then another. When he reached the foot of the cliff, he stopped. "Sayan!" he shouted, and his voice broke. The she-wolf looked at him. The light in her eyes was warm, human, full of recognition, and her was his sister, her childhood, everything they had lost. She approached the edge of the cliff and slowly descended. The wolves stepped aside, and Nuri came to her side, touching her shoulder with his muzzle. There was a silent covenant between the two, not only of blood, but of destiny. Sayan stopped in front of Tarak. She looked up at him, and her eyes lit up, and in an instant, the wind stopped. Everything fell silent. She opened her mouth and let out a short, but gentle howl, not of pain, but of separation. Tarak fell to his knees. He understood. T was not a farewell, but a blessing. The spirit of the forest appeared again, floating between them, a warm, trembling light. "The howl of love is the song of the world," his voice said. "When a being loves to the end, the earth and the sky unite for a moment. She chose. She chose to be between the worlds, where love never dies." The northern lights stretched across the sky, forming a bridge between the rock and the forest. The white she-wolf took a step forward, then another, followed by Nuri. The other wolves followed them, silently, like a sacred procession. When she reached the edge of the forest, Sayan turned one last time. She looked at Tarak, and he answered her with a slow gesture, touching his chest. The heart. She raised her muzzle to the sky and howled again. This time, her howl was pure, clear, like a tear of light. T rose. It rose. It turned into a vibration that seemed to hold the entire world. Together, Aurora descended over the forest, and the snow began to shine, and Yaransk, people fell to their knees. Some cried, others smiled. For the first time, they did not feel fear. They felt peace. The howl of the white wolf and Nuri's response remained in the air long after the lights in the sky had faded. It was a song that the wind always carried back, as if time did not want to let it die. Tarak was left alone, looking at the forest. "Stay there, little sister," he whispered. "Stay free." And for a moment he thought he saw, among the shadows, the silhouette of a woman, 𝖂𝖏𝖏, smiling, with wind-blown hair and golden eyes, disappearing among the trees. The world fell silent. The aurora faded. Only the echo of the howl remained, like a living memory, and in the years that followed, the villagers of Yaransk would say that on winter nights, when the moon was full and the sky was ablaze with colors, a song could be heard from the forest, sometimes sad, sometimes gentle. They called it the howl of love. And they told the children that there, among the trees and stars, lived a white she-wolf who watched over them. That there, love had not perished, tea had only been transformed into light. Chapter 21. Dawn over the ruins. Morning was slowly breaking, like a wound beginning to heal after a night of fighting. A strange silence hung over Yaransk, neither joy nor utter sadness, but a weary peace born of suffering. The snow, melted in places by the flames that had consumed the village, had frozen again in irregular shapes, like broken mirrors reflecting the pale colors of dawn. The air smelled of smoke, blood, and burnt wood, but deep within it was a new breath of the world, silent but alive. Tarak sat on a log, watching the morning light spread over the ruins. The ash rose in thin wisps, and the sun's rays made it look like a golden veil. Around him, the people of Yaransk moved slowly, still in a state of shock, and no one spoke loudly. Those who still had a house were trying to gather wood and supplies. Those who had nothing were taking shelter in half-burned barns. On the nearby hill, the wolves had disappeared, no trace, no howl, only their tracks in the snow, disappearing among the trees to the east. Only Tarak and a few elders had seen them leave, silently, carried by the fading auroral light. The white she-wolf had led the way, and Nuri, their lost brother, now the leader of the pack, had followed in her footsteps. It was as if the world of beasts was retreating again into the depths of the forest, leaving the earth and their suffering to the people. Tarak felt his heart heavy, but cleared. He missed his sister. That heartbreaking longing that no longer translated into tears, but into silence. 𝖂𝖏𝖏 was no longer a woman, but neither was she beast. It was something else, a bridge between worlds, a song of love and pain that would never die. Ilya had died for her, and through his sacrifice, the curse had been broken. But everything had a price. Yaransk had paid in blood. The sun rose over the ruins, timid. Its light, warm and yellow, spilled over the smoking houses, over the bodies buried under the snow, over the remains of a world that had been torn apart and healed at the same time. Little boy, with a dirty face and wide eyes, emerged from the rubble and stopped, looking at the sky. Then, without knowing why, he smiled. "Dad, has the she-wolf gone?" he asked. The man behind him, a hunter with a bandaged hand, looked in the direction of the forest. "He's gone, son, but he'll watch over us from there." His words, though simple, spread through the village like a blessing. Within hours, the people began to work again. They extinguished the remaining fires, cleared the streets, buried the dead, and that dignified silence. There was no longer any hatred. Only a gentle, respectful fear of something they could not understand. Tarak stayed late in the middle of the village. He helped erect a wooden cross for the lost. On the upper arm he carved a wolf and a flower. When an old man asked him why he had chosen these symbols, he simply replied, "Because they both belong to the same world. One blooms by day, the other howls by night. But both love the same sky and the afternoon." The wind began to blow gently from the forest. Tea seemed like a sigh, a comfort. Tarak closed his eyes and heard it, his sister's voice. Not a howl, not a word, but a warm vibration. Almost like a song. He opened his eyes and saw a white silhouette among the trees. It was just an illusion, but for him it was enough. The same moment, at the edge of the forest, Nuri, the wolf, was looking at the village. His eyes were deep, immersed in the light. He felt the wind. He felt the memory of Ilya. He felt the connection that had not died. Then, without a sound, he turned and disappeared among the fir trees. The pack followed him. When evening settled over Yaransk, The villagers gathered around a new fire. No one spoke of curses anymore. It is said that when a woman from the village tried to tell about the white she-wolf, an old man put his hand on her shoulder and said, "Don't call it a curse, woman, it was love. And love, when it is too big for a heart, turns into fire and light." From that day on, the villagers no longer chased the wolves. They no longer organized hunters, they no longer set traps. Instead, every year, on the night when the aurora covered the sky, they lit a large fire in the middle of the village and threw ice flowers into it, the symbol of peace between man and beast. Tarak remained among them for a while, helping them rebuild everything that had been lost. When the village rose again, he set off west, accompanied only by horses and the silence of the forest. He felt his brothers close, Nuri, through the wind, and Sayan, through the light. One night, when he was camping at the edge of a frozen lake, he looked at the moon and saw two reflections, one of a wolf, the other of a woman. He understood then that the world does not break in two, but stretches in circles that touch. In silence, Yaransk lived on. The children born after that winter grew up with stories of a woman with snow-white hair and golden eyes who loved a man and became a legend. Some said they heard her howl on clear nights, others swore they saw a white shadow running through the fir trees. But no one was afraid anymore. On the hill behind the village, the wooden cross carved by Tarak stood upright. Every time the sun rose, the light hit the wood and made it shine. It was the place where people stopped to bow their heads and remember that love and fear come from the same place, the human heart. One morning, a child asked an old woman, "Grandma, what is a curse?" The woman smiled, looking at the forest. "A curse, my dear, is just a love that has not yet found its place in the world." And at that moment, the wind brought from afar a barely perceptible sound, a howl, a song, a breeze. People stopped and listened. The sunrise over the ruins brought not only light, but also forgiveness. The wolves were gone, but not their spirit. Yaransk was reborn from the ashes, and the legend of the white wolf remained, floating between the worlds, as alive as the aurora that rose again over the Siberian sky. And so, where love had been pain, peace was born. Where there had been blood, light grew. Where there had been a howl, a song was heard. It was the song of the world at peace with itself. It was the sunrise over the ruins. Chapter 22. Tarak remains. The days in Yaransk flowed slowly, like honey flowing on wood, sticky and warm. After the storms of the night, after the fire and blood, the village was beginning to breathe again. The pure and cold air of Siberia seemed gentler, and the melted snow made its way into smooth rivers, murmuring among the ruins of houses. Tarak had remained here, alone, carrying with him the memory of his brothers, but especially of the sister who, through her sacrifice and choice, had changed his destiny. In the morning he would always find him in his improvised workshop, near the old hearth, where he would make the iron shine again. But it was not the same iron as before. He no longer beat metal for weapons, for traps, or for hunting. He no longer transformed strength and anger into tools of destruction. Now every blow was a prayer, a form of respect for life and nature. Every piece of shaped metal carried within it an oath, not to destroy what had been created by the forest, the wind, the sun. The villagers looked at him with respect and fear. Although he was no longer a wolf, nor a beast, something in him retained the wildness of the forest. His eyes were piercing, and his presence inspired both security and a slight fear, reminding everyone that man and beast coexist, even if their worlds seem separate. The children had approached him timidly, drawn by the stories of the white she-wolf and the pack that had passed through the village. Tarak often told them about Sayan, without revealing everything, but letting them feel the sacred connection between man and nature. Every day, Tarak worked alongside the villagers, rebuilding houses, repairing fences, and building new hearths. But each wall he erected was also an exercise in patience and respect. He no longer rushed anything. He had learned that strength should not dominate, but protect. With each brick laid, with each wooden lair erected, he felt his heart return, how the pain of losing Sayan gradually turned into understanding. On long winter evenings, when the snow covered the village with an immaculate white carpet, Tarak climbed the hills near Yaransk and looked out over the forest, knew that Sayan was there, somewhere among the trees and stars, watched over by Nuri and their pack. This thought calmed him. Even if he could not touch her, even if he could not hold her by his side, she was free, and her freedom was the greatest victory. Tarak began to put his knowledge of iron and fire to work in a creative way. He built tools for the villagers, tools that did not harm nature, plows for the soil, knives for daily work, pliers and tools that helped with everyday life, and each object, you could feel the respect for life, for the air, for the earth and for everything that surrounded him. The iron he shaped was no longer just matter, it was an extension of his heart, a covenant with the world that Sayan had cherished so much. On nights with at dawn, when the sky lit up with colors and the wind carried the echo of the she-wolf's howl, Tarak sat in the workshop, looking at the fire and feeling that his brothers were watching over him. Sometimes he thought he could hear whispers, advice, encouragement, a call to be brave, to be gentle. He knew that Sayan and Nuri were no longer part of the human world, but their connection to him was alive, invisible, but palpable like the cold wind that bit his cheeks. The village began to accept Tarak not just as a blacksmith, but as a guardian, an unseen protector. He was not a hero with a raised sword, but one with hands covered in soot, with a watchful gaze, with an open heart. He had understood that true strength is not shown in destruction, but in preserving the balance between man and nature. One spring day, Tarak went to the bank of a stream that ran through village. There, where the snow had melted and the waters flowed clear, he carved the faces of his brothers in wood, Sayan, Nuri, and himself. They were not real faces, but symbols. Sayan with golden eyes and white fur, Nuri with the body of a wolf and a piercing gaze. And he, Tarak, with his hands full of soot, but with a peaceful heart. "For you, my brothers," he whispered, "even though you cannot see me, I wish you were here, but I know you are free." And for the first time since that bloody winter, he felt truly free. Not free like the wolf running through the forest, but free like the man who understands the value of every life, every winter, every flower that sprouts from the snow. Tarak began to organize people, to teach young people how to respect the forest, how to look for food without hurting useless animals, how to build without destroying. He learned from every scar in the village, from every ruin, that life cannot be forced. It must be felt, listened to, respected. Every evening, when the auroral light trembled on the horizon, Tarak would stand on the roof of the workshop and look at the forest. He knew that Sayan was looking at him in turn, that Nuri was still watching over the pack, and that their howls intertwined with the beats of his heart. In those moments, he did not feel alone. He had sworn to himself that he would never again raise his sword against nature, that he would never again kill even with his mind, that he would be a man who respected life in all its forms. And thus, Tarak remains in Yaransk, among the ruins that are slowly turning into houses, among people who learn to live with the memory of the she-wolf, with respect for the forest and with a love that never dies. Between his work and the stories of the villagers, between the Siberian sunrises and sunsets, Tarak lives with the memory of his sister, with his lost love and with his covenant with nature, to be the guardian of the balance, the man who has learned that true power is not in destroying, but in preserving, protecting, and loving. Under the clear sky of Siberia, with the wind playing among the trees and with the howls of the distant pack like an echo of the past, Tarak feels complete. He has remained. And in that act of patience and love, the village is reborn, nature breathes, and the legend of the Wolf brothers continues to shine in hearts like an eternal aurora. Tarak lives, and in his kind, Sayan and Nuri live through him, and the forest, eternal and immortal, watches. Chapter 23. The Voice of the Flute. Night fell over Yaransk with a smooth expanse of shadows and silver, like a veil of mystery placed over the still fragile village, shrouded in the ashes of the past. The forest on the edge of the village, dense and ancient, spread a mixed scent of fir, frozen leaves, and reburned earth. The wind whistled through the branches of the trees, carrying with it old echoes, howls of the pack and memories of the nights when Sayan had still been man and wolf, when fire and blood had drawn in the snow, stories that people would tell long after. But that night, as on many others after that, The village was gripped by an unexpected phenomenon. A flute song, clear and melancholic, was heard among the trees, like a breeze that slips through the open window of the soul. The sounds were neither simple nor random. Each note seemed to it came from a hidden place, deep, beyond the world. It was music that intertwined two worlds, that of man and that of the wolf. Nuri, the quietest brother, the one who had remained a wolf, was in the heart of the forest. His silver and shiny fur mixed with the darkness of the night, making him almost invisible. His eyes, however, shone in the moonlight, yellow and piercing, reflecting the longing that burned within him. From deep within, he felt the lack of his sister, 𝖂𝖏𝖏, but also the love that had not died, even though their bond had been modified by choices and sacrifices. He had been chosen to guard the forest and be the voice of the white she-wolf, and now, with his flute, he had transformed pain and longing into a song that transcended the limits of the world. The sound of the flute rose above the snow and crept into the village like magical whispers. The people who were sitting in their homes, still recovering from past tragedies, began to listen attentively. The sound did not cause them fear, but a deep, almost palpable emotion. It was longing and love condensed into a pure form, a message to those who still lived and breathed in the world, that what you lose physically is not really lost, that true bonds remain, and that nature, be it human or wild, preserves the memory of love. Tarak, who had stayed behind to rebuild the village, immediately recognized the signature of the sound. He knew that Nuri was singing for their lost sister, and each note was found their suffering and joy, the memory of childhood and the nights spent under the sky full of the northern lights. Each melody was a story in itself, an unseen covenant, reminding the people that 𝖂𝖏𝖏, although disappeared from their world, still existed somewhere between the two worlds. The children gathered at the edge of the forest, curious and fascinated. They tried to distinguish the figure of the flutist, but the moonlight and the shadows of the trees hid him. All they could feel was the energy of the sound, vibrating in their chests, and it aroused a sense of respect and wonder. The elders of the village, those who had survived the tragedies, knew that it was neither magic nor a demon, but something much older, a connection to the forest and the beings that inhabited it, to the white she-wolf who had watched over them, and to the pack that had always been part of the balance of this world. The flute's melody was varied. Sometimes it was sad, like a sigh of the night, sometimes energetic, like a leap of the pack through the snow. Each change was calculated, intentional, as if Nuri wanted to convey to the people not only the pain of loss, but also the joy of survival, the balance between life and death, between man and beast. His song had become a nocturnal ritual, a covenant between the two worlds, and a living memory of those who had once been together. Tarak often left the village in silence and walked to the edge of the forest. He looked through the trees and listened. Sometimes he felt the thrill that Nuri was watching him, and that 𝖂𝖏𝖏 was listening to him somewhere nearby, and that the sound of the flute united their hearts. And in those moments, Tarak felt that his sister was not lost, but that she lived through the call of her wolf brother, through music and through the vibrations that crossed their souls. The village began to accept this nocturnal presence. People had learned to no longer fear the sounds of the forest. The flute's song had become a sign of protection, a message that the packs were no longer seeking revenge, but only to maintain balance. It was a lesson in respect. Man must coexist with nature, accept what he could not control, and recognize the power of love that transcends form. Over time, the villagers began to understand even more. The children learned to play the flute, trying to reproduce Nuri's melodies. It was not the same sound, but each note carried within it a part of the legend of the pack and the she-wolf. It was education and magic at the same time, a form of connection with the unseen world, with the spirit of the forest, and with the power of love that knows no death. Dawn nights with the northern lights, the sound of the flute merged with the lights of the sky. Each note seemed to become visible, leaving traces of light in the air, like gold and silver threads. This was the memory of 𝖂𝖏𝖏, an invisible but palpable presence that protected the village and reminded everyone that true love can never be extinguished. Tarak knew that, despite the distance and silence, his brothers were close. Nuri sang. 𝖂𝖏𝖏 watched, and he remained to build the world of people without hurting those around him. Every blow of the hammer on the iron was now accompanied by the melody of the flute, every spark was a note in their common song, and those nights, the village lived between silence and sound, between fear and respect, between loss and hope. The voice of the flute was a bridge between worlds, a sacred covenant between man and nature, between past and present. T was the call of love that does not die, but transforms, that rises above the screams and flames, above fear and pain. And so, every night, when Yaransk fell asleep under the cloak of stars, the voice of the flute resounded through the trees, an echo of the white she-wolf and her pack. Nuri sang for his sister lost, and people listened, feeling in their hearts that true love is never lost. It was the voice of the flute, a song of pain, love and hope, which forever linked the hearts of those who listened and the forest in which they lived, living legend. Between worlds, that will be heard as long as the wind carries the sounds. Over the snows of Siberia. Chapter 24. The White Forest. Winter in Yaransk was more than just a change of season, it was a transformation of the world. The forest, which in other months was guided by wind and light, was now wrapped in the white coat of snow. Each tree was a pillar of crystal, each branch carried the weight of the flakes, and the silence was so deep that one could hear the sound of one's own breathing and the crunch of snow under unseen footsteps. And this realm of immaculate white. Legend says that a being appeared who connects the world of humans with that of the wild. The white wolf, 𝖂𝖗𝖃, sister of Tarak and Nuri, was left between the two worlds. By day she was a woman, carrying in her eyes the amber of human fire and the gentleness that conquers, and at night she transformed into a white wolf, the living spirit of the forest. It was a covenant with the spirit the forest, a promise that she would never forget the blood, love and pain that are part of the existence of all beings. But this gentleness was mixed with power and mystery. Her eyes reflected the northern lights, and her silhouette, even when she was a woman, retained the grace and agility of a predator. Legend has it that on the harshest nights, when the wind blows through the fir trees and the snow creaks under the weight of the flakes, the white she-wolf approaches the fires of people. She does not attack, does not hurt, does not catch prey. She only stops at the edge of the light and looks. Those who meet her gaze feel a thrill that crosses the heart and mind. There is the love and pain of the world, mixed, lived simultaneously, pure and misunderstood. It is a testament to the balance between man and nature, between blood and heart, between instinct and reason. The people of the village of Yaransk had begun to notice the appearance of them. The elders told stories about how wolf tracks, almost transparent in the freshly fallen snow, led the curious to the edge of the forest. There, between the ice-laden trees, a white silhouette could be seen. Some had heard the sound of the flute, others just the rustle of the snow. Whoever had the courage to look into her eyes felt both the deep love and the eternal pain of existence. It was as if the entire history of the world, all the sacrifices and hidden joys, were reflected in that gaze. Tarak, who had rebuilt the village, observed all this with a combination of respect and longing. He knew that his sister, 𝖂𝖗𝖃, had once been a woman and that now she was the bridge between two realities. He could not touch her, he could not hold her to his chest without hurting the balance she protected. But every howl that echoed from the forest or every appearance in the snow reminded him of their brotherly bond, and her eyes was read the lesson that the spirit of the forest had offered him. Freedom and true love always come at the price of responsibility and suffering. The village changed with her appearance. People no longer looked at the forest with fear, but with respect. On nights with the northern lights, the curious they went outside just to catch a glimpse of her from afar, to feel the silent vibrations of her existence, and to understand that between man and the wilderness there is an invisible bridge. The children told each other that the she-wolf was not evil, but a spirit that watches over, protects and loves beyond the human form. On such a night, 𝖂𝖗𝖃 approached the edge of the village. Her white fur shone in the light of the fires, and her steps were light, almost invisible. People felt her presence like a fresh breeze passing through the windows, like an unseen shiver that reminded them of their roots and their connection to the forest. Her golden eyes reflected all the emotions of the world: love, loss, courage, pain, freedom. Those who looked too long felt that they were looking not just into the eyes of an animal, but into the heart of the universe. Nuri, the wolf brother. As she watched from the depths of the forest, 𝖭𝖏𝖏's every move was carefully watched. Every howl or step was a message between the brothers. The sound of his flute mixed with her footsteps and the moonlight, creating a symphony that seemed to protect the village and maintain the balance between the worlds. And those moments, the entire Haida, even if unseen, felt 𝖭𝖏's presence and responded to her with delicate howls, which did not scare the people, but reminded them of the power of love and brotherly bonds. Tarak understood that the legend of the White Forest was not only about 𝖭𝖏, but about the balance between life and death, between man and beast, between individual freedom and responsibility towards others. Each appearance of the she-wolf brought invisible lessons, that true love transcends forms, that pain is not necessarily destruction, but a teaching, and that protecting those loved ones sometimes means staying away, watching from the shadows and respecting the mystery of each being. The village began discreet celebrations to commemorate her presence on nights with aurora. Fires were lit, ice flowers were thrown around them, and the people looked at the forest without fear. Tea was a form of gratitude, a covenant between man and nature, between what is visible and what remains unseen. One evening, Tarak climbs the hill near the village and looks at the forest. The wind brings howls and rustles, and among the trees he sees a white silhouette that seems to float on the snow. He feels that 𝖭𝖏 is looking at him, that her spirit is there, that her love, freedom, and sacrifice merge with the breath of the forest and the song of Nuri's flute. Thus, the legend of the White Forest grows, not only in the stories of the villagers, but in their hearts. The white she-wolf becomes a symbol of love that transcends form, of sacrifice and balance, living lesson that worlds can coexist and that, sometimes, the gaze of an animal can reveal more than any words, the love and pain of the world, piercing the souls of those who have the courage to see. And every winter, when snow covers the village and the forest, those who listen carefully can hear the rustle of her footsteps and feel the sparkle of her eyes. Tea is the White Forest, a place where man and wilderness meet, where love has no form, but has the power to heal and bind entire worlds in an eternal covenant. Chapter 25. The Woman in the Dream. Years passed over the village of Yaransk, and winter, with its cold flakes and the White Forest, remained a silent witness to stories that never fade. The village, once shaken by fire, blood, and screams, had slowly rebuilt itself, with hard-working hands and patient hearts. The old houses, repaired and strengthened, shone under the moonlight, and the smoke of the peasants' heating brick stoves rose to the clear sky. Life followed its course, in simple and harmonious rhythms, but the echo of past events still pulsed in the air, like a subtle murmur of a story that cannot be forgotten. In this apparent silence, a little girl, Mara, barely 7 years old, lived between childhood games and dreams that crept in like unseen shadows. On a winter night, when the wind blew over the village and the forest creaked under weight of the snow, Mara fell into a deep sleep. Her dream was different from all the others. She was walking in a white, shining forest, where the snow sparkled like a sea of crystals. Among the trees, a silhouette was outlined, and the girl immediately felt an inexplicable attraction, a thrill that ran through her entire being. In front of her stood a woman of unearthly beauty. Her hair was silver, shining like snowflakes under the moonlight, and her amber eyes seemed to encompass the entire world, the forests, the snow, the howls of wolves, and the echoes of people's hearts. She was 𝖭𝖏, the sister of Tarak and Nuri, but transformed into a symbolic, eternal presence, the bearer of the connection between man and nature, between love and sacrifice. Her presence was not threatening, it was calm, but full of power, like a beacon shining in the middle of a storm. "Don't be afraid of wolves," the woman tells her in the dream, with a voice that seemed to vibrate through the air and snow. "They are just the memories of this world." Her words fell into Mara's heart like a seed. She understood without knowing why that the shadows in the forest, in the village, and in her dreams were not evil, but reflected everything that had been loved, lost, and protected. The woman was not just an apparition in a dream. She was the symbol of love that transcends time and form, the eternal bond between brothers, between man and nature. And the dream, Mara felt a warmth that ran through her chest. This warmth was Sayan's gentleness, but also her wild power. T was a balance between vulnerability and strength, between human life and wolf instinct. The little girl understood, without rational explanation, that the world is not just black or white, but full of shades, shadows and lights that coexist. As the woman, as she watched, Mara felt every wolf howl, every breath of wind, and every glimmer of the northern lights in the Siberian forest merge into a single melody. T was the song of love and protection, of sacrifice and freedom, of life and death that intertwine without destroying. And those moments, the little girl felt that she was not alone. The presence of her wolf brothers was with her, through their symbols, through the stories they passed on, and through the spirit of the white forest. Sayan continued to speak, and her voice echoed like a whisper that warmed the soul. We learn to love, even when we lose. We understand pain, but also joy. We look at our shadows, because they show us the light that defines us. Mara felt a thrill of gratitude and deep understanding, and the forest spun around her, and the moonlight and the silver of the snowflakes seemed to pulse with the same rhythm as her heart. And that moment, she felt a connection with all beings, with the people of the village, with the trees that bent under the snow, with the wild animals, and, above all, with the woman in the dream, who represented unconditional love and protection. And the morning, Mara woke up in her bed, but the dream had not disappeared. Every sound of the wind, every movement of the forest, every distant howl of the pack seemed to repeat the melody of her dream. She knew that it was not just a dream, it was a message, a testament left by Sayan for those who have the courage to look beyond appearances, for those who can feel love even in the shadows of the world. Tarak, who still lived in the village and watched over the people in the forest, observed how the children grew up with the stories of the white wolf, and every little girl or boy who looked at the forest with respect and curiosity, he recognized the flame of the spirit of his brothers. Their story had become a ritual. The connection between man and nature, between love and sacrifice, was transmitted through dreams, songs, and glances. In the evening, when the wind blows through the trees, and the snow creaks under the weight of the flakes, the voice of the woman in the dream pours into the minds of those who seek her. Do not be afraid of shadows. They are only the memories of the light. And so, the legend of Sayan, of the white she-wolf and her brothers, continues to live, alive and strong. T is no longer just the story of a she-wolf or a village lost in the snow, but it is an eternal lesson about love, sacrifice, freedom, and the invisible bond that unites all beings. In every dream, in every glance thrown into the forest, in every howl of the pack, or in every note of the flute, Sayan lives. And in that presence, people learn that light and shadows are not separate, but coexist, and that true love transcends time, form, and the world we live in. Thus, the little girl Mara became a witness to a story older than the snow, but as vivid as the northern lights. And every night, when the forest whispers and the howls of wolves echo through the trees, she knows that the woman in the dream watches over them all, reminding them that shadows are but memories of light, and true love never dies. Epilogue. Years passed over the village of Yaransk. The forest, now quieter, still wore its white cloak of winter, and the wind echoed through the trees with echoes that seemed to be howls mixed with flute whispers. The village had rebuilt itself after the storms and fires of the past, but the memories could not be erased. Every house, every road, every window bore a trace of the pack, of the white she-wolf, and of the love that had been between man and beast. Sayan no longer lived among humans as they knew them. On full moon nights, she would return as a she-wolf, her white silhouette shining in the silent snow, and her eyes burning with the same golden light that had once fascinated the villagers. Her presence was now a symbol, the memory of lost love, of sacrifice, and the impossible connection between man and nature. Those who met her gaze felt something they could not explain, a thrill of love and pain, of freedom and silence, all at the same time. Tarak lived among people, but the memory of his sister accompanied him everywhere. He knew that Sayan had not been completely lost. She existed between worlds, watched over by Nuri and the spirit of the forest, and every howl, in every rustle of snow, in every sound of a flute that spread from the depths of the forest, Tarak felt their connection. T was an endless covenant, love and protection never die, but transform, adapting to the world and time. The children of the village grew up with the stories of the white she-wolf. They learned to respect the forest, to listen to the wind, and to look with admiration at the snow tracks left by the beast, mysterious. Sometimes, at night, when snowflakes fell, the voice of the flute could be heard among the trees, reminding everyone of the invisible connection between man and the wilderness. Each note was a message. True love transcends time and form, and shadows are nothing more than memories of light. One evening, a little girl from the village, looking at the forest on the hill that guarded Yaransk, saw the white silhouette of the she-wolf, and that look, she felt everything. Love, pain, sacrifice, but also the ultimate freedom. She knew that the Sayan spirit protected the village and her loved ones, that her love had remained between the worlds, between man and wolf, a covenant that no one can break. Thus ended the story. The village learned that love and sacrifice know no limits, that shadows are just echoes of light, and the white she-wolf, eternal and mysterious, watches over Yaransk and the forest, a symbol of the connection between man and nature, between heart and instinct, between the past and eternity.